And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bashing us, him.
Roll call.
That's right. Good morning, everybody. 8:05 live Eastern Time, and of course, 5:05 coast to coast, dark, bright, and early. Grab your coffee and donuts. We got a good one for you. I think this one is quite interesting. John, New York City legalizes Jay Walking. But before we do that, how was your trip in St. Pete's? And of course, I want to thank everyone for the continued support for Derek. It's been amazing, humbling, overwhelming. The support has been astronomical. And for those people, God bless you. Sometimes I get texts, and some of our friends, listeners, and people throughout the different communities, podcasting, police, fire, military, jiu-jitsu, friends, family, they usually text, hey, you don't have to text back. I know you're busy. It means a lot. So, you know, the text, the phone calls, it really helps keep my mind off of things. Thank you. John, what's up, brother?
Yeah, nah, bro. Week was good last week. I think we went to St. Pete's, Treasure Island, went to Fort DeSoto. That was a pretty cool park. Real cool, just on the West Coast, traveling around Florida. What else did we do? You know, we went, my daughter wanted to see Snow White, so I took them to see Snow White. And like literally, and my wife's like, yeah, I've got us tickets to go to see Snow White. And I look at the paper and it's like woke Disney. And I'm like, here we go, you know. But I watched it, and honestly, it was good. I enjoyed it. You know, I had the conversation with my daughters right after the show about what was different from the 1937 film that we've watched numerous times, and you know, definitely went a little woke, not gonna lie, but it's a different rendition, and overall I don't think it was bad. I think the biggest knocks on Snow White were she was dark skinned instead of, and they said that she was named Snow White because she was born during a snowstorm. The original book says that she was named Snow White because her skin was white as snow. Right. And then this wasn't a prince that came to save her. It was like a thief instead of the prince that came. But he winds up, he still has to kiss her. They couldn't change that part of it. And he saves her life throughout the film. There was a couple other differences in the film. I forget. Oh, when Whistle While You Work. Snow White, remember when the dwarves leave and they go to work and the house is a mess and she cleans the whole house, her and the animals? This one, they make the guys clean. The dwarves and her clean it together. So, I mean, it was like these minor differences, but all in all, I was like, I enjoyed it. I was like, whatever. I was like, listen, here's the differences between things. This is the world. It is what it is. This is what it was in 1937. This is what it is now. I was like, whatever.
Well, to me, that's written by a bunch of feminists, right? They're trying to switch gender roles. I mean, and of course, all the guys are coming in doing the cleaning. The only thing I'll say is this. I used to kid around with people, and I used to always say, you know why marriages don't work? I blame Disney. Because girls grow up their entire life, right? And they're waiting for this prince to come and save them. He ain't coming. That guy doesn't exist. Like, you know, they give this like image, and they grow up their whole lives, and it doesn't work out.
Well, the prince was gone, so he was a thief, and you know, she winds up taking over and stays the queen. You know, so it was a couple of things, but overall, I thought it was funny. I thought it was a good thing. But I was like, you know what? Sometimes you just got to put your political nonsense aside and just sit there and be like, all right, it's what it is. Yeah, this is that. I mean, and most of it, I just like to laugh at, you know. And then you know, I spoke to the kids about it after, and it was a good conversation.
Was Snow White vaccinated?
Probably. I would think so.
She got boosted halfway through the show.
They're taking the dwarves are taking the 2-in-1, the flu shot, and you know, they break out in the middle with a commercial. But no, I mean that's what you know. I like I said, I don't like to shield my kids from things. Like, you know, I like having the conversation with them. I actually enjoy when they come home with some nonsense from school, because I'm like, not that it happens much here, but in New York it happens often, because it gives me a chance to address it, right? Like, whereas opposed to, you're not going to shield your children from the world, right? It's just not going to happen. They're getting exposed to it whether you like it or not. I'm not buying Disney. I'm not going here. Okay, good luck to you. Like their friends at school are gonna tell them about it. Their friends at the park are gonna tell them about it. Whatever it is, you're not shielding them from life. So, but it was good. All in all, it was good.
Yeah, your kids are watching YouTube. I call it YouTube University. You want to learn anything, find out anything in life, just go to YouTube. When I'm working on my RV and I get to a point like the rubber meets the road, like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing on this part, go right to YouTube and they walk me right through it. So YouTube, you can learn anything. Right? I even it's funny you say that. Somebody was telling me, asking about my experience getting guns off the street in New York City, and where do the guns come from, and how do the perpetrators know how to use these firearms? I said, YouTube. I said, if anything, it's more dangerous now than it was back then, because now the perpetrators, without any firearms training, learn how to use firearms through YouTube, different social media sites. You can learn anything on YouTube. So let's jump right into it. What do you think, John? Jaywalking. You do it? Don't do it? What do you think? Do you think this changes anything or not?
It's crazy, dude. I honestly, I think the sky's falling down over it? No, but I think there's I think it's significant, and I think it just shows where New York City still remains in New York State and the political agenda of New York. I think it is big. So obviously, City Council overwhelmingly passed a few months back to legalize jaywalking in New York City. So that's what this show is going to be about today. Before we get into that, we're just going to give a shout out to our friends at Fund the First. If you're looking to hold a fundraiser, definitely check out Fund the First. Great platform. They verify all of their campaigns, so nobody could do a fundraiser for somebody else like what has been happening over and over again on these other fundraising sites. So, and when we come back, we'll be talking about what's going on in Jaywalk.
Ever wonder who helps our everyday heroes when they need support? Enter fundthefirst.com, a unique crowdfunding platform dedicated to first responders, their families, and their friends. Unlike typical sites, we don't take a cut. Every dollar goes directly to those in need. Whether it's for emergency medical bills, family emergencies, or equipment, fundthefirst.com is there. It's our chance to give back to those who risk it all for us. From police officers to firefighters, these heroes deserve our support. Want to make a real impact? Check out fundthefirst.com and show our heroes that we've got their backs. It's time to support those who always support us.
So what do you think, Eric? Do you think it's a big deal? Do you think it's not? Like, what are your thoughts on jaywalking?
So I think there's two lenses to actually look at this, right? So I think that if you just look at actual jaywalking and summonses behind it, the infractions of it, it's not a big deal, right? It's not a big deal. Some people jaywalk no matter what. Some people don't. It's kind of a personalized thing where people cross on the crosswalk. I mean, I think it's something we should want to teach our kids, especially in New York City. But where does it change things? It changes things on the political spectrum. And it shows that New York City Council, as John and I have been saying for the past two and a half years, is still on this hunt to tear away at law enforcement. It's just another brick taken away from the foundation of law enforcement. It's just chipping away and taking away tools and handicapping the police from doing their job. And also driving this ideology, this false ideology of gaslighting the public that blacks and brown, Hispanic are being disproportionately targeted by the police department. Now, I don't have the numbers. I would love to get the numbers of what is the correlation to people actually jaywalking to getting struck by vehicles and ultimately ending up in potential serious injuries or fatalities in New York City. And are those people involved in those type of incidents that lose their lives tragically from jaywalking? Are they black and brown? That's something I would love to look at. I don't have the numbers, but I think it's really the political spectrum that changes things. And it shows that New York City Council, by far, is not done at stripping away from the police department.
So, for those of you not in New York, jaywalking is you cross the street in the middle of the street. You don't go to the crosswalk. and cross at the light with the light, right? When the light turns red, you walk. When the sign says walk, you walk. Jaywalking is flouting those rules and just crossing in the middle of the street. Seems minor. The law was put in place to actually protect lives in a city as dense as New York City. Crossing in the middle of a street, not at the light, could cost you your life. Has cost people their lives. It's caused traffic. It's caused accidents. It's caused a lot of unnecessary harm to public safety and traffic safety. Something that I consistently hear from city council that they care about. They say they care about public safety. They care about traffic safety. They care about pedestrian safety. But yet they say they want to remove jaywalking from being a crime. And you're saying, why? Are people getting arrested? Are people getting summons? Like, why? Like, I've jaywalked. I probably jaywalk every time I'm in the city, but I do it when there's no cars coming, right? I do it when there's no cars coming. I'll run across the street in the middle of the street, like when you see. But there are people that will walk out into traffic, oncoming traffic, as cars are coming and just want everyone to stop for them. Obviously, that should be illegal, but it's no longer. So currently, it's still illegal. No one's enforcing it now because by the end of this month, jaywalking will be legal. So just to put it in perspective on its face, once this law is no longer a law, jaywalking, you could, in the middle of traffic, whatever it is, rush hour traffic, whether it's the morning or the afternoon or after work, you could just walk out in the middle of the street at any point, stop traffic. The cars have to stop for you. The liability is now on the driver. It's now on the insured and registered driver in New York City to make sure they don't run people over who are just crossing whenever they please. So right there, I think we could say that we're going to see pedestrian deaths rise. We'll see this in 2 or 3 years. Easy. When we look back, you're going to see pedestrians injured and deaths rise. 100%. But Eric, your experience, you worked in Manhattan. You worked in dense areas of New York City. How often, if any, did you summons or arrest anybody for jaywalking?
Very simple answer. Never. The answer is never. That's why I say New York City Council wants to gaslight the public and give this ideology that the NYPD is out there stopping and issuing jaywalking summonses. Now, I'm not saying they've never been issued, but I personally have not targeted anyone for jaywalking or actually utilized that summons. Richard Kentaff, good morning. He actually says, how many jaywalking summonses were written? And that's a great question. How many jaywalking summonses were actually written in an entire year? That's an outstanding question. I don't have those numbers, but I'm sure there's not many. But on the political spectrum, we have New York City Council just stripping away and chipping away at the police department. You taking away tools that are legal justifications for a pretextual stop, for an intercounter, for a street. I'm sorry, excuse my language here. A street encounter with potential persons of interest. So let me give you a rhetorical scenario here. By the way, I see Mike Smith here is just get off topic for a second. Mike Smith, retired Mike Smith, is on the chat right now. He's live, still pumping out shirts for Derek. If you haven't got a chance to take a look at that link, please go to retired Detective Mike Smith's page on social media and still promoting shirts for Derek. So I appreciate it, Mike. Good morning.
The link's also on the bottom of this episode, wherever you're watching or listening.
So here you go. Mike actually throws in. He made numerous gun collars because of jaywalking. Absolutely. It's a tool, a legal justification for a stop. It's a tool for police officers to utilize, potentially getting firearms. But forget about even firearms. Let me give a rhetorical scenario. So let's say, for instance, now let's use Times Square. Everyone knows where Times Square is. Most people have either been there or they've seen it on Google. So you can picture in your head what it looks like. Where active retired members, you've been to Times Square 1,000 times, police enthusiasts, but maybe someone out of state, maybe you haven't been who's watching this podcast, maybe you actually haven't been to Times Square, but you've seen it on TV. Maybe you've seen it on a Google map. That's a major thoroughfare. And let's use 42nd Street and 8th Avenue. Let's use that as our intersection. And let's use 42nd Street as a divider. And let's rhetorically say on one side of the street, we have known gang territory, whatever name you want to call it. And the other side of the street, we have opposing gang territory. And let's say we have a rival beef going on. And now because of New York City Council, we don't have a gang database anymore to keep track and monitor our persons of interest and our gangs in the area to keep the gang safe and potential innocent bystander victims. And now we have 20, 15 to 16-year-old boys walking across the street, potential gang members from one side of the street who are now crossing the street to the other side while there's an active beef going on between two separate gangs. And all of those 20 boys are jaywalking. Now, wouldn't that be a legal justification for a street encounter to potentially stop some further violence? Yes. And that's what New York City Council is doing, stripping away at the tools for the police department to use to keep the public safe. These people that we vote in for New York City Council are not making you any safer. They're making your lives more dangerous.
I mean, and then you got to sit there and you got to say, like, what is this about? Let's get into the numbers a little bit. New York Post wrote an article about this. Let's see what the Post wrote. So, the Big Apple has drafted a rule that officially make jaywalking legal in 5 boroughs by next month. But police data shows there was little enforcement of that law when it was still a crime. The move comes months after City Council overwhelmingly approved decriminalizing jaywalking, making it legal to cross a street outside of a crosswalk or a traffic signal. Although the new rule would scrap the $250 fine and make the change official, jaywalking laws were rarely enforced when it was a crime. Only 780 summonses were issued in all of 2023, according to NYP data. There were just about 398 summonses in all of 23, about 1 per day, the data showed. The city council passed legislation in a veto-proof 40-8 vote last September to legalize or decriminalize jaywalking, saying minorities were disproportionately slapped with summonses. The measure was championed by Brooklyn Councilwoman Mercedes Narcisse. I mean, and just right on its face right there, that's what they're telling you. It has nothing to do, we don't care if it saved anyone's life from not getting killed. We don't care that the NYPD uses this as a tool for pretextual stops, to stop violent crimes, to get illegal guns off the street. We don't care about any of that. We only care that disproportionately Black and brown people were given summonses at a higher rate. Now take that argument to everything. Black and brown people in New York City are arrested at a higher rate for shooting people, for carrying illegal firearms, for rape, for robbery, for burglary, for grand larceny. Should we make those legal? Councilwoman Mercedes Narcisse, should those be legal based upon that train of thought? I guess all of those should be legal too. Murder should be legal. That's what she's saying to me. I mean, what do you think about that school of thought right there? Based upon the fact that this is why we need to get rid of it. This is the holy grail of why we need to get rid of things.
Well, it's the most ridiculous thing, right? So any profession that you do, you need tools to do that job, right? And for some reason, we want to take away tools when it comes to the police department. And people don't understand tools. Like, they only envision what should look like. What's a template for policing? But police officers need tools. And some of those tools don't look or appear to be the tools that you normally see. And that's what makes policing unique, is some of the tools that we use are not necessarily something that's tangible. Sometimes the tools that we use are non-tangible, things that you can't touch, things that you can't actually see or understand unless you're in the policing world. And here's my kind of like understanding of it. So, I like to work with my hands and, do plumbing and things like that. So sometimes, years ago, before I started with the police department, I would do side jobs and do some plumbing just to make some extra money. And a lot of times I would carry tools to do some plumbing jobs, small jobs at people's homes. And I would carry Wonder Bread with me. I would carry a pack of Wonder Bread. And people are like, what's that for? I'm like, well, that's one of my tools, right? And what do you use that for? So anybody who's ever done any plumbing work here, if you have a broken pipe and you want to stop the water that's coming in that pipe so that you could actually clean the pipe, dry it out, and solder it, you would take Wonder Bread. So here's a trick if anybody wants to know. You take Wonder Bread and you shove it in the pipe. And that gives you temporarily a couple of minutes to dry the pipe out, clean it, and then solder it together. And then once you turn the water on, once the water comes back, it will just dissolve the Wonder Bread, and the pipe will start flowing. Is that a typical tool that you would see? But it's a tool, it's a resource to do plumbing. So that's what people don't understand. We're getting illegal firearms out there. We're trying to stop people from committing crimes. And jaywalking is a tool that police can utilize to get something bigger, just as the retired Detective Mike Smith said here, getting illegal firearms or stopping gang members. And we're stripping away, we're chipping away. They're trying to remove the gang database. We're removing jaywalking, and we're creating this picture of this disproportionate rate, which is a complete lie. What do we hear from New York City Council? We just had the New York City Council here giving their testimony about the gang database with no evidence, with not a good baseline to actually describe why it's a problem. It fails on its face constantly. It's just an epic fail. It's gaslighting the public, and this idea that it's racist. It's racist to stop someone in the street for jaywalking. Again, I don't know what the numbers are. I would love to know how many summonses were actually written in an entire year amongst 5 boroughs in a city of 8.5 million people, millions of tourists a day. How many actual summonses were written for jaywalking? If you had a guess, or is it in this article? I don't know. How many do you think it is?
No, she said 380 summonses in a year, almost.
Okay, that's right. She did say it. Which is an average of a little bit more than one a day for an entire city. So ridiculous.
So that passes overwhelmingly. The NYPD testified at City Council saying that jaywalking summonses are only issued on hotspots where there is a high number of traffic accidents or deaths involving pedestrians. Now, that's not accurate. That's not an accurate statement. Obviously, if we were having a high number of pedestrian deaths, we would flood the area looking for not only pedestrian violating the law, but people who are in vehicles breaking the law. So we would do that, and we would issue summonses at that point. But that's not really why these summonses are being issued. Mike Smith told you why these summonses are being issued. He's made numerous gun arrests from jaywalking. And that's what it's being used to. It's being used to control and restore order in New York City, something that's been gone this last decade. So, they give but I will say their reasoning is fair as to why it should stand. If there is a problem, let's just say there's one area in New York City where it's very dangerous to cross the street. But for whatever reason, based upon the setup of New York City, construction that's going on at the time, everyone is crossing at this very dangerous intersection where people continuously losing their life. The NYPD has no apparatus now to stop that from happening. They can't. It's not illegal. The other thing is, and we spoke about it already, and a lot of you continuously asking about it. The other thing is, you're driving in your car. Somebody just walks out in the middle of the street in front of your car and you hit them. You didn't see them. You're looking for people at the crosswalk. Obviously, in a competent society, that's where people are, right? When you have the green light, people aren't traditionally walking in the street. But we've just broken down a competent society. We've done that over the last decade by electing people like Bill de Blasio, Eric Adams, and all of these losers in city council. So They've broken that down. So now you're driving. You have the green light. You're driving. You're doing 20 miles an hour because you can't go any faster anyway because there's a camera light everywhere in New York City. So you're probably going 15, not even. You're going 15 miles an hour. You're driving. You're sitting in an hour and 45-minute traffic to drive 9 miles. And someone walks out in the middle of the street and thinks that you should see them and you see everything and you should have eyes everywhere. And you clip them. Guess who's at fault? You are. Because the person did nothing illegal. Pedestrians have the right of way. So not only does this further emasculate the police, this further is an attack on cars in dense areas, particularly in New York City, in Manhattan.
Well, you're absolutely right? I think you highlighted a great point. That's something we should talk about, right? It makes a difference also on the nomenclature of the neighborhood and the actual particular streets, right? In Times Square, for instance, you could see thousands of people a day jaywalking. And that's because the traffic there is super slow. There's not that many cars. They've taken away a lot of the sidewalk area. So the cars that are there are going at a very slow rate of speed most of the day. You know, in the overnight hours, it starts to change a little bit, and cars do go much faster because the traffic changes. But throughout the day, when it's encompassed by tourists and cops and just people that are traveling in New York City, people that live there, people are jaywalking the entire day. It's not really a big deal. You don't have to pass on the crosswalk there. You cross right in the middle of the street. There's not that many cars. So it doesn't really impede traffic as much. It doesn't limit the view of the drivers that are there. But what about a street, let's say, for instance, Houston Street in the Lower East Side, where cars are moving fast. Now, it's not a highway, but that's a street where even in a highly dense populated area, cars are moving quick. The traffic flows pretty well there throughout the day. Is that somewhere we want some people jaywalking? So the problem is the message that this sends to kids. You know, it's something already that parents already keep a close eye when it comes to the kids and constantly regurgitate and reiterate to cross on the crosswalk to be careful. But what message does this send to our kids right now? It's a bad message, even though it's not something the police are addressing, but it's a bad message for kids to have this in their back of their mind that it's not a big deal anymore. Hey, if our political leaders, right, it's something that we grew up believing, our political leaders are people that we're supposed to trust. Our parents, our parents' friends are electing these people. Why shouldn't we trust them? They're saying that jaywalking is not a big deal. It's something that shouldn't be criminalized, but yet we're going to tell kids not to jaywalk. And so those are the questions. The answer should be why? If our political leaders say it's okay, why would it be any different at home?
So Rob Lukash is he's letting city council know what law they should decriminalize next. So Chief Lukash says disorderly conduct 24020 subsection 5 still provides law enforcement with charging obstruction of vehicular or pedestrian traffic. So we have seen city council decriminalize many of the subsections in disorderly conduct that have been removed as a result of this decriminalization. So I guess this one's going to be next. If we see that there is a correlation that more black and brown people have been issued the summons, that subsection of disorderly conduct will also be removed, because that's what's happening here. We're just taking tool after tool away from the police department. This is an anti-police, anti-vehicle agenda you're seeing in the city council. They don't care because half of them will never live in the city again. They just come into the city, take the money, and run. That's traditionally what we're seeing in New York City. So Eric Adams and his leadership, you know, he doesn't care because he takes the train to see his shorties, or he gets driven around by people that he makes deputy mayors. So he could care less. He doesn't care. So he did not sign the bill. He didn't veto the bill. He didn't say anything about the bill because, hey, that would be the job of a mayor, right? We don't have one. Sorry. So the Department of Transportation new rules set to go into effect on April 17th. They said that pedestrians who fail to yield the right of way of other traffic would not be subject to the violation of traffic rules. Again, you are held accountable. You're driving in your car, you strike somebody, the police show up and you tell them, "Oh my God, he just walked out in the middle of the street while I had the green light." They're not getting hit with disorderly conduct. They're not getting a disorderly conduct summons. You're going to be the one that's subject to everything. You're going to be at fault because, again, they violated no rules, no laws, and the insurance company is going to find you at fault without a doubt. You could even put the camera on your dashboard that shows that they jumped in front of your vehicle. Guess what? The pedestrian has the right of way and they did nothing illegal. You're at fault. The rule struck language that said no pedestrian shall enter or cross. But during testimony on the bill last year, DOT First Deputy Commissioner Margaret Forgione said it was a mistake to make jaywalking legal. Although jaywalking is a common practice in New York City, it can have deadly consequences, Forgione said. Over the last 5 years, 200 people have lost their lives crossing the street mid-block or against the signal, making about 34% of all pedestrian fatalities. A rep for Mayor Adams urged pedestrians to follow the traffic rules despite the criminalization of jaywalking. All road users are safer when following traffic rules, said City Hall spokesperson Allison Mazer. We continue to encourage pedestrians to take advantage of safety mechanisms in place, such as daylight, pedestrian islands, and pedestrian intervals by crossing in a crosswalk with the walk signal. Pedestrians could still be liable in civil lawsuits for accidents caused by jaywalking. How? That's not an accurate statement at all. We're urging people to be competent and to be civil, but you don't have to be. Legally, you don't have to be. How are they going to be held liable? It's impossible. Doesn't even make sense.
This is where we need to have a button, and every time something stupid comes up, we play from Mayor Eric Adams. What are you, stupid? That's what I want to hear right now. I was like, what are you, stupid? The bottom line is, how do you enforce rules if you don't enforce them? It doesn't make any sense. And how do you have a rule if the rule was taken off the board? I mean, listen, this is coming from Eric Adams. Eric Adams is also the same guy who says, hey, I tell my people, follow the rules, follow the law. But I also tell people in the public, when I was going to visit my shorty, I jumped the turnstile because I didn't have any money. So you know what? That's next. Can we take off can we remove jumping turnstiles? Because eventually when congestion pricing comes back, that will pay for it. So we can jaywalk. We don't need a gang database. Can we get removing turnstiles? We don't have to pay for turnstiles either. It's just going to be a complete free-for-all. Patrick Donahue makes a great statement here. Pat, what's up, brother? Great interview last week, by the way. I hope your friends and family enjoyed it. I hope if anyone missed it, go back and see it. Patrick Donahue, awesome. He says, I investigated no-fault insurance fraud for over a decade. My office never once charged jaywalking for a pedestrian who staged an accident and intentionally got hit by a car. Boom. Drop the mic right there. Absolutely. Do you hear that? His office never once charged jaywalking for a pedestrian who staged the accident and intentionally got hit by a car. So the pedestrian staged it, did on purpose, and they weren't held accountable. They were not issued a jaywalking summons, but yet we had to remove it anyway. This is absolutely insane, complete insanity. These people that are in New York City Council need to have their head examined. This is great. But yet Eric Adams didn't veto it, didn't sign it. But now he, after the fact, wants to say we should follow the rules. What rules? How do you follow rules if you don't have a standard and metric of discipline? How do you tell your kids, John? Same thing for me. How do you tell your kids, you know what? Don't do this. Because if you don't do that, here's the consequence. Just like the parents I used to always tell. John, these parents, they tell their kids, well, if you don't do what I tell you, I'm going to count to 3. And I used to always tell those parents, like, what happens after 3? You just count again? And that's what Eric Adams is doing, right? Because there's no rules. I count to 3 if you don't cross the street right, and then we'll just count again. Well, there has to be discipline, right? If you tell your kids don't do this, what comes next? Do you remove something? Do they get timeout? Like, what do you do? And for this, we're going to tell them to follow the rules, but we'll just count to 3 again.
Charles Drew says, why do we spend millions of dollars on walk and don't walk signs? Suggestions. They're mere suggestions, you know. It's funny, like everything's a suggestion in New York City now. You could carry a firearm illegally in New York City as long as you're a repeat offender. If you're a gun enthusiast, however, and you legally have a license and you legally own firearms and you 3D print a gun in your home, that's never going to be a threat to anyone that you're going to take to the range, or you 3D print a piece of that firearm because you're an enthusiast and no one never knows about it, you're going to go to jail for a long time, my friend. So the rules are everything's suggested now, only for repeat violent offenders. If you're a repeat violent offender, you can do as you please. The rules set up in place are there to protect repeat violent offenders. Everything. Discovery law, bail reform, anything, this whole decriminalization of the New York Penal Code is all there to protect repeat violent offenders. It has nothing to do with public safety. It has nothing to do with pedestrian safety. It has nothing to do with common sense. It has nothing to do with racism. These people are morons. They just use this talking point. And honestly, weak white people let them get away with it because they're afraid to have a conversation on race. That's who's to blame. Blame the weak white people that will not have a conversation related around race. Like, what are you talking? What does that mean? What does that mean? Okay, so are you saying that because black and brown people were disproportionately given jaywalking summonses that they were racially targeted? Are you saying that those officers racially targeted those individuals? Oh, you are. Okay, so which officers? Which scenario? Take us back. Let's review the video. Let's see. Was it? No, you're the person that you're saying is racially that was given a summons who was a victim of racism actually jaywalked. So what are you saying? They jaywalked. Are you saying that we shouldn't issue those summonses to black people? Is that what you're saying? What do you mean? Let's have this conversation. What are you talking about? What do you mean? Should we no longer have this law? And now that we don't have this law, what happens? The racist cops that were issuing summonses to black people are allowed to walk scot-free? We ended racism by taking away the tool from the police department. Where are we going with this? No one addresses this. Not even the white mayor that we have, Eric Adams, who pretends to be black sometimes. You know, no one addresses this. This is the dumbest statement ever. It disproportionately affects black and brown people. Okay, well, why don't you care that black and brown people are disproportionately affected by violent crime? Why don't you care about that?
This is why I love the chat. Friends, listeners to the podcast, I love you people. You really help. Some of these comments are awesome, and you keep this conversation going. One comment here, Richard Kentaff asks a great question. It's a state penal code, right? If it's a state penal code, how does the New York City Council decriminalize state law? That's a great question. I like that question a lot. I want to explore that even more. Fantastic. If you get any literature on it, Richard Kentaff, please forward it. I appreciate it. Mikey G, Metal Detector, Long Island. What's up, brother? How you doing? Here's a guy, a good friend to the podcast, really affected by the vaccine. Excuse me. Allergies are killing me here. He says, what's next? Are they going to decriminalize the kids riding on top of subway cars? That's a great question.
They might as well. They're disproportionately black and brown kids.
Yes.
Why not? Why are we going to be racist? Why is it okay to be racist then? I want to ask Mercedes Narcisse, are you a racist? How come you didn't decriminalize that?
What do we know about her? Mercedes Narcisse, know anything about her?
I don't know. I just know city council overall as a whole has an anti-police agenda, regardless of how they claim. I'm pretty sure she's a defund the police advocate. Not 100%, but I mean, that's like It's like throwing a dart in a bar. You're likely to hit a dartboard. Like it's same thing.
I'm going to do my homework on it. I'm sure she's just like everybody else there. The illustrious 46. So for New York City counts, keep in mind it's 51 districts, illustrious 46. It's only about 5 that are decent. And I say decent. But on a whole, it's ridiculous.
But and so just to go back on Richard Kentaff, so yeah, it's a state law. You're right, but the city council could pass law in New York City. They control. They have more power than the mayor. They're the ultimate authority. They're the lawmakers in New York City, and they're saying that the NYPD can no longer enforce this, and that's it. The law is there. The law is the law. That's it. They create law in New York City. That's how the system's set up. So it's there's nothing, at that point, once the laws are passed, it is what it is. And so like when I watch Jessica Tisch give these fiery pre-written speeches that are all read from a piece of paper, when I watch her, I'm like, she's right about a lot of stuff. What she says when she talks about the discovery reforms, when she talks about the bail law, she's 100% right. But why is your family funding these people? Why do you vote for them? Why are you in bed with them? Why are you a Democrat? Why are all the Democratic Party removing tools from the New York City Police Department? What do you have to say about this, Jessica Tisch? What do you have to say about this? Does this affect public safety? Were the cops racist? Was this a necessary thing to be done? Is this where we should be heading as a city, as a government? Is this a competent government? Are these people competent? She's not going to answer the question because she can't. Because, like I said, they're all in bed together. They're all in bed together. And that's the whole problem in New York City. Where are the Republicans? I don't know. I haven't heard anybody. I mean, they voted against it. Did they make a big deal out of it? No. It's just further. This is just defund the police. It's just going to continue. Defund. This is what defund the police is. It's really emasculate the police. That's what it is.
I would like to see on the books, is there any penal code charge or any traffic rules that we know of where whites are disproportionately summoned and arrested for a particular charge? If there is, I'm not looking into this. I want to explore it because if there is, if we can find something where white males actually receive more summonses than black males or arrested for a particular crime, I want to forward it to New York City Council, and I want them to decriminalize whatever charge that is. I want them to target that just because whites are getting summoned more than blacks in something particular. Mike Smith says that 52% of white males have low testosterone. He said the weak white males are at 52% testosterone level. It's disgusting. They eat soy. Well, that's very true. That's very true because where are the white alpha males to say this is absolutely ridiculous? This is ridiculous. This is out of control.
It never stops. It never stops. It just keeps going. Where's John Schell? What does John Schell have to say about this? What does the NYPD chief of department have to say about this? What is he going to tell you? Oh, no, don't worry about it. Those guys are just blowhards. Don't worry about it. They said it. They've said it. You're not pedestrians when you're driving in the car. Even if somebody hits you, you could still be liable for lawsuits. Yeah, really. Let all the drivers know when their insurance rates are jacked up next year because of this. Let everybody know that no, it's good. Everything was fine. But this is again, this falls to the voters in New York. This falls to the candidates. These city council seats are so easily winnable. They're so easily winnable, yet no one's putting an effort to get these far left radicals out. Nobody. The Republican strongholds have their candidates. You don't see any DSA candidates going in there. You don't see any far left progressive challenging them. And the same thing's true for the socialist candidates. They're in areas where there's very conservative people. They're in areas where there's moderate Democrats. Yet the only person running is a far left socialist. is a far left progressive, is an incompetent moron. How? How do you win? You need 7,000 votes. You know how easy that is? You know how easy that is to get in New York City? But the problem is nobody wants to run. And that's why there is a huge base of retired cops, of retired firefighters, of retired teachers that still live in New York City that the GOP should be getting behind. The GOP and even the Democratic Party, because I don't want to say like the Democratic Party has been hijacked by radicals. Why can't you find moderate candidates that aren't going to be insane? I don't remember the Democratic Party hating cops in the 80s, in the 70s, in the 90s. I don't remember that.
You know, some of our friends and listeners, they put a good comment here. I'm curious, right? So I did say, I'm curious to find out what penal code charge or traffic rules, infractions, or violations where white males get summoned or arrested more often than their counterpart, black and brown in the community, to determine if there's any disproportionate rate. And some people are saying DWI. That may be so. I'm curious. I have to look into it. Maybe it is DWI. Because if it is, if more whites are being arrested for DWI, then I want to speak to city council and say, okay, then this is something that should be decriminalized. We should start decriminalize it. There's more black and brown. If there's more Asians being summoned for something. Someone also put open container during St. Patrick's Day, LOL. Let's talk about that also. Because according to city council, a disproportionate rate. And let's be honest here, it's not a racist statement. It is true. Parades that are encompassed and succumbed by overwhelmingly white males, there's far more enforcement than there is when it comes to parades such as the West Indian Parade that are encompassed by mostly black and brown. It's mostly, the overwhelming majority of it's black. They come from the islands in the Caribbean. And the enforcement is not the same. There's much less enforcement at the West Indian Parade than the St. Patrick's Day Parade. I know from my own anecdotal experience. I worked both parades. I worked the West Indian Parade every year. I worked the St. Patrick's Day Parade. And John, let's be honest, they are policed differently. There is much more enforcement at St. Patrick's Day Parade than there is at the West Indian Parade. And I challenge anyone to argue me on that.
So let's look at the city council members. So Mercedes Narcisse introduces this, right? Tiffany Caban co-sponsors it. Julie Wan, Shahana Hanif, Crystal Hudson, Farah Lewis, Eric Botcher, Darlene Mealy. And our favorite, the Golden Girls winner, Lincoln Wrestler. So Lincoln Wrestler has a big problem with the way the police department parks, right? At almost every city council hearing, public safety hearing, he goes after the chief of department, the police commissioner, and every head of the New York City Police Department for how NYPD officers park both department vehicles and their personal vehicles. And why does he do that? He says that it causes pedestrians to have to walk in the street, which will ultimately lead to pedestrians being killed, which is a huge public safety hazard. Now, I don't disagree with him, right? I disagree with him that it's the police department's fault. It's not the police department's fault that their buildings are almost 200 years old and they weren't meant to hold. They don't have parking around them. It's not their fault. So officers come from all over New York City. They're sent all over the city at any time. And unfortunately, they need to drive. Right? They're not transported around unless people are going to transport them around. So I agree with him. Yeah. Should cops be able to do and park everywhere and anywhere? No. They shouldn't. So parking is an issue for pedestrian safety because he doesn't want people walking in the street, but yet he co-sponsors a bill that allows pedestrians to essentially walk in the street. This bill would permit pedestrians to legally cross a roadway at any point, including outside of marked or unmarked crosswalk, and allowing crosswalk against traffic signals. It would legalize the activity commonly referred to as jaywalking and specify that crossing against a traffic signal or crossing at any point of a crosswalk will not be a violation of the admin code and therefore can no longer be subject of a summons. The bill would also require the Department of Transportation to conduct an education effort regarding the rights and responsibilities of pedestrians and operators of motor vehicles, bicycles, and other mobility devices on city roadways. So they're going to educate the public that you can cross at any point at any time when you so please. That red light, that stop sign, that crosswalk is a suggestion for you. Feel free to walk out in the middle of the street at any point, and there's nothing anybody could do to you. That's what Lincoln Wrestler is telling New York City, while at the same time beating up the New York City Police Department about where they park department vehicles and personal vehicles, because that's a danger.
You got to laugh at this insanity. Lincoln Wrestler obviously has no common sense when it comes to society. A warped sense of his mindset is completely warped. Absolutely ridiculous. Before I go talk about that, I just want to say Daniel Krzenia comment here says DUI and DWI are state laws, not city. FYI, Eric. Yes, thank you so much for validating, solidifying exactly what we're saying. We're making a comparison here of why DUI or DWI should be decriminalized. If there are more whites being arrested for it than their counterparts, black and brown, so is jaywalking. Jaywalking is also a state law, and it's being decriminalized and being permitted by New York City Council. But of course, here is Lincoln Wrestler, just a complete maniac, little Golden Girls, man, and totally off base here. Right. People could just walk. It's a free-for-all. Pedestrians could walk in and out of cars driving at 60, 70 miles an hour. And some people say, well, that's not the speed limit. Okay, great. Cops can't stop every car. There are people that speed, and people need to protect themselves by not jaywalking and being smart. But what's more of a danger, John? The cars that are illegally parked. That's more of a danger because the cops are getting a benefit. We need to take away those benefits because those benefits that cops have, that's what's really dangerous to public safety. Because the cop that illegally parked with his plaque at a precinct because he couldn't find a parking spot so that he could get to work and be on the street. Some people should say, well, then he should come into work earlier. You know what? These precincts were never built for the city, the nomenclature, and the conglomerate that it is right now for cops to park in these precincts. Cops are working hours, and they're working to the point of exhaustion. They burn the candle at both ends. They're never home. They're working so many hours. They need somewhere they can park so they can just park and get to work. And then some people say, well, they should take the train, this and that. You know what? Be a cop for a day. They're going back and forth at all hours of the day. They don't know what time the train is coming. They probably missed the train for where they're going home to Long Island or upstate and then getting off 3, 4 in the morning. It's absolutely ridiculous. Let's make a foundation. Why don't city councils start talking about how do we make and accommodate so cops can park so that they can get to work, so that they can be out there enforcing public safety. But apparently they don't have to enforce public safety because the rules, the laws, the traffic rules, the state laws that are on the books are being decriminalized and removed. They just want a complete free-for-all, and it's just more exactly what you said, John, defund the police. That's the ultimate theme. That's the agenda.
That's the agenda. And you know, the whole basis of race, it's laughable to me. So let's flip the script. Let's say the majority of jaywalking summonses were given to whites. Overwhelmingly, 99% were given to whites. Should we take it down? Would Mercedes Narcisse believe that that's racism? Oh, I don't think so, because I think that the whole agenda is out there. And I think that white people have also bought into that agenda that you can't be racist against white people. So if it's 99% white people are jaywalking, 99% of the people that are issued summonses are people that are considered white, who I'm still trying to figure out who those people are. We haven't clearly defined them because we just lump everybody in there, right? If you start making it ahead in the United States of America, we'll throw you in there too, regardless of the color of your skin. Don't worry. So if 99% of the people issued summonses for jaywalking were white, would that be an issue? And I'm going to tell you right now, no, because you know what they're going to say? Well, they were breaking the law. And this is where we're at. This is where we're at in New York City, where everything is based on race. The white people are sitting there telling black people that white people are racist against them. And what are they doing? They're making black communities very unsafe. Very unsafe. Let's look at the chart I have up. Look at the chart. Look at the chart. When did all these pro-criminal, anti-police laws, these criminal justice reforms come into place? 2018. Look where crime is. It's on the floor. Look where crime is now after bail reform, discovery reform, city council decriminalizing almost every minor crime that the NYPD uses as a tool for pretextual stops, that gives the ability for the NYPD to stop violent crime and to stop people from carrying illegal firearms. Look where it is now. Here, that little dot right here, that's where Eric Adams comes into office. But let's not focus too much on that. Here you go. Here's the public safety is the prerequisite to prosperity. There's Eric Adams. Look where violent crime is now. Look where it is. All the way up there. So it's like, you could almost get me. You could almost tell me anything if that chart showed that crime was decreasing after you did this. But after you did all of this, crime has went through the roof. And who has it affected the most? Has it affected white people? Has it affected the white neighborhoods? I don't think so. I don't think so.
So, shout out, good morning, Tabitha Foster, good friend to the podcast here. She makes a comment. She's having a conversation with someone by the name of Prime Timer 1234. They're having some back and forth here. Tabitha says, Primer Timer 1234. When I was an active cop, I did not trust anyone because I believed crime comes in different races and ages. Crime had no color to me. I handled people accordingly, regardless of race. Now, Tabitha, I think what you're saying here is that you were a professional cop and that you didn't see color in your decision-making on what laws were broken or what rules were broken. You were being professional. And that's what we expect from every single cop. But what we're talking about here, I'm going to push back on you, is something completely different. What we're talking about is policing a particular crime in an area based on crime stats. That's usually what we talk about. On an individual level, every encounter you have should be professional, and you should treat that crime based on what was committed, what impact that person of interest could have. Is that person part of a gang? Do they have a violent history? Not based on race. But what we're saying is, and you're talking, I know you and Prime Timer 1234 talking about how we police in different neighborhoods. Let's be honest. We are going to put more cops on foot post, and I'm going to use these two commands because you were talking about that, in the 7-5 precinct than we would in the 111 precinct, because we have more violent crime and we have to target that crime with more of a presence and more intrusive police work. And there's probably going to be more summonses and more arrests because the crime trends and the needs of that command in the 7-5 precinct require more intrusive police work than it does in the 111 precinct. Not based on race, based on crime stats. What yields and the byproduct of the outcome is more black and brown people are being summoned and arrested in the 7-5 precinct than the 111 because of those crime stats.
Yeah, so again, it falls on its face when you look at where the crime's happening and then who's the victim of these crimes. So Sam Mantar, white collar fraud, former guest on the podcast, good friend of the Finance Unfiltered. He was recently just an article that he had published about Letitia James's finances and about how she was doing what appears to be mortgage fraud, which she accused Donald Trump of. Donald Trump had just shared that. Check out whitecollarfraud.com to look at what's actually happening with Letitia James. But Sam puts together this chart. And this chart shows in 2024, New York City violent crime risk by race. Percentage of higher risk compared to white New Yorkers. So he compares the race and what's your percentage of being a victim of a crime compared to white New Yorkers. So in 2024, ready? If you're black, you're at a 929.8% greater risk of being murdered than a white person. If you're Hispanic, you're at a 386% greater chance of being murdered than a white person. If you're Asian, you have a 55.8% greater chance of being murdered than a white person. Rape, if you're black, you're at a 221.5% greater chance of being raped in New York City if you're black. You have a 157.5% greater chance of being raped if you're Hispanic. You have a 1.7% greater chance if you're Asian. Robbery, you have a 280% greater chance of being robbed as a black person in New York City. You have a 325.5% greater chance of being robbed if you're Hispanic. You have a 202.4% greater risk of being robbed if you're Asian. Assaults, if you're black, you have a 342% greater chance of being assaulted if you're black. You have a 210.5% chance greater if you're Hispanic. You have a 48.3% greater chance of being assaulted if you're Asian. So this is what these disastrous criminal reform policies have done. They make New York City less safe for everybody, but more so for the people that they're claiming to protect. They're claiming to protect black and brown people. They're using the fact that black and brown people are on the opposite end of law enforcement the majority of time when it relates to summonses and arrest, and they're using that to decriminalize laws while ignoring the fact that who are they committing the crimes against? Black and brown people.
Good morning. Shout out to Drone Ranger. Hey, Drone Ranger, do me a favor. If you could send me the literature and the evidence that you got this information from, just in case anyone challenges us on it. Great point here. If Drone Ranger is right and accurate, these numbers are accurate, we could remove making graffiti. It should be just art in the street. We could decriminalize that because according to Drone Ranger, in 2024, there were 1,413 arrests for making graffiti. Breakdown by race. White Hispanics, 379. Blacks, 302. Black Hispanics, 102. And you ready for this? The evil white man, which... John, do we fall into that evil white man? 546. So the overwhelming majority of those arrested for make graffiti were white. So Drone Ranger, please, if you have the literature, the evidence, please send it to me because people will challenge us on it. If that is accurate, and I appreciate you putting that in, Drone Ranger, if that's accurate, we should decriminalize because whites are being disproportionately arrested for making graffiti. Let's decriminalize. Just please. You know what? Maybe you shouldn't write on the buildings. People don't like that, but we're not going to have a law for it. We're just going to try to enforce it, though. But if you're a police officer and someone graffitis their car, it's okay. It's not a problem.
No, graffiti's art now. It's art again. Remember, it was art, and then the city was covered in graffiti. You couldn't go on a train car that wasn't covered in graffiti. And then Rudy Giuliani cleaned it up, and they started to make graffiti a crime. And then Bill de Blasio came in and said it's art again. Eric Adams went along with that. And so, no, of course, we'll decriminalize that because, hey, it's racist against whites, right? Disproportionately, enforcement has to be even everywhere. If enforcement isn't even, it's discriminatory, right? That's what we're going on. That's what we're going to use. Drone Ranger also puts out this stat. There were 3,568 DWI arrests in 2024 in New York City. Only 413 of them were white. By far, the most is white Hispanic, which is 1,556 people. Black, compromised 922. Again, it's disproportionate against white Hispanics. It's racist. We got to get rid of it. Decriminalize DWI.
Hold on, I'm writing all these down. We got to get rid of some of these crimes over here.
Is there? But here's my thing. Here's my thing. Right? Is there any crime that's being enforced in New York City that the enforcement is completely equal based on race?
What about gender? Let's start. We have females are disproportionately, I don't know the numbers, but I can tell you right now, arrested for prostitution more than men. Can we just get rid of prostitution? Because more women get arrested for prostitution than men. I don't need the numbers to even know the answer. So are we talking females for prostitution? We need to decriminalize that.
No, we don't look at gender, because if you looked at gender, you would know that 96% of the people in jail are males. So we can't, and 96% of the people arrested for violent crimes are males. Overwhelmingly, disproportionately arrested are males. So we can't look at gender because the males are the ones committing the crime.
Well, according to Tanya Meisenholder, we should actually look at the sexual orientation. So let's start looking at crimes. If there's crimes that are committed more by gay men than straight men, we need to remove that one also. If you're gay and you commit a particular crime more often than straight men, I want that decriminalized also. Everything has to be just totally even across the board. This is total communism. We shouldn't have any differences. Everything should be exactly the same.
It's crazy, dude. Honestly, like the argument falls on its face, and yet giving that argument like overwhelmingly is fine. It's completely fine. Let's look at how decriminalization has done for prosecution in New York City. Prosecution of crimes, right? We've got to make sure those are proportionate, those numbers, right? Let's see. So, where are we? Cases dismissed. New York City criminal courts have seen a massive 455% surge in forced dismissals since 2019, when then Governor Cuomo signed a law tightening discovery rules on prosecutors. There's a lot of stuff in there. The Post continues to show how pro-Adams they are. It's a lot of stuff that Cuomo put in that's signed into law that affects this, but there's a lot of other factors in there too. Not just that, not just the discovery law. But if we're focused just on the 2019, so cases dismissed in 2019, there were 8,282 cases dismissed in 2019. Supposedly, there were 2,473 cases dismissed in 2020. I think that number is highly inaccurate. I don't know. Maybe they stopped doing accounting during the pandemic. That just does not seem accurate at all. I don't know where they're getting that number from, but whatever. That's what they're reporting. That's what the New York Post is reporting. 2021, there were 10,827 cases dismissed. Again, these are people that were arrested by the NYPD. 2022, it doubles, more than doubles, 23,448. 2023, 31,863. Right? 2024, 45,970 cases were dismissed.
By the way, Drone Ranger, thank you so much. So according to Drone Ranger, 91% of prostitutes in 2024 that were arrested were female. We need to decriminalize prostitution immediately. There should be no charges for prostitution. Sorry. Listen, Kaz Daughtry, before you became deputy mayor, you had your operation on Roosevelt in the Queens. That should be shut down. I guarantee you they're arresting more females on Roosevelt Avenue for prostitution than males. You don't see that as a problem? I see that as a huge problem. That's disproportionately targeting women over men. I want that removed. New York City Council, if you're listening, that should be removed. We're talking about race. We should talk about gender.
Absolutely. So let's look at, I haven't been paying someone too much mind, but she hasn't been paying us too much mind either. So I think it's time we start to highlight her as well. Here's New York City mayoral candidate and New York City Council Speaker Adrienne Adams. She was never for the defund the police movement. She was just for the reallocation of funds away from the NYPD, which is defunding the NYPD. Here's what Council Speaker Adrienne Adams had to say on the shooting of a black man by NYPD officers who was emotionally disturbed, had a large kitchen knife, refused to comply with officers' orders, charged at them. It was all on body camera. The whole encounter was captured on body camera. The NYPD cleared officers on the shooting. The Bronx District Attorney cleared officers of the shooting. But here's what Council Speaker Adrienne Adams had to say on that. And then you'll start to get a better picture of what's happening in New York City Council and what's happening in New York City politics.
My heart and my support are with the Trawick family. No parent wants to outlive their children.
Ellen and Ricky Trawick invited inside City Hall.
We really appreciate it.
As one of the most powerful elected officials in the city, Council Speaker Adrienne Adams declared she stands with them.
I want to apologize on behalf of this council for all you've been through in having to fight for basic accountability.
The Trawicks started their week inside one police plaza as the two police officers involved in their son's death face an internal NYPD disciplinary trial.
It's been very stressful to watch that video again and again.
Drop the knife.
This video is now evidence in the NYPD trial of officers Brendan Thompson and Herbert Davis. The officers were called to the Bronx Supportive Housing building where Trawick lived after he locked himself out of his apartment. By the time they arrived, Trawick was back inside his home.
I got a knife because I'm cooking.
Tensions escalated quickly. First, officers tased him, then Trawick was shot and killed.
It pains me to hear the stories time and time again of Black parents losing their children at the hands of police violence.
The city's medical examiner testified in the trial earlier this week, saying the officer's bullets likely killed Trawick within seconds.
It was very traumatizing for us.
The officers are being prosecuted by an attorney for the Civilian Complaint Review Board, accused of using excessive force and not rendering medical aid. The union for these officers is standing by them, saying the case was thoroughly investigated by both the Bronx District Attorney and the NYPD's Force Investigation Division, which found no evidence of wrongdoing by these officers. CCRB is not claiming it has any new evidence that would change those findings.
We want these two officers fired. It's been 4 years, too long.
Ultimately, the officers were cleared in the department trial, as they should have been.
Here's the case when it comes to Kowalski Trawick. John and I did extensive monitoring of CCRB as far as their input, their interjection when it came to the Kowalski Trawick case. We actually attended a virtual monthly meeting at CCRB where John and I both testified about that case and gave our opinion and perspective. First of all, I think there was an overreach by CCRB, and there's no doubt in my mind there's an overreach by City Council. They shouldn't even get involved in this incident, especially this one in particular. Now, we could argue what unfolded on how the two police officers ended up in that apartment, which is what CCRB and City Council is getting to, as far as should they have a right to be in that apartment or not. But the bottom line is those two police officers, when they were in that apartment, they were presented with not a small knife, and even doesn't matter. They were presented with a large knife, and they had no choice but to fire rounds and to go home safe that day. It's absolutely ridiculous that they're actually even commenting and get involved in a case like that. And ultimately, the police officers, they were found cleared of any wrongdoing. They did their job, and there's just oversight, overlayers, and overlapping of oversight in this city to to criminalize and demonize and weaponize legislation towards the police officers and never give them any fair due process. We have oversight of DOI, internal affairs. We have the DA's offices, CCRB, City Council. How many eyes do we need on the police department to have an effective police department? In the end, it comes down to optics. That's all they care about is optics. We have a black male in an apartment that I believe is actually homosexual. So we have gender, we have the gay community, we have black. So let's get all the ingredients of woke agenda to actually perpetuate and put this case out there. The police officers did nothing wrong. Absolutely ridiculous. You should stay in your lane, Adrian Adams. If you vote for Adrian Adams for mayor, you're out of your mind.
So Adrian Adams, I didn't put it out yet, but I'll put it out later today. She's on a podcast that had a whopping 14 views on it. Now 15 because I watched it. And she didn't say defund the police. She said we had to be careful with our words. She wanted to reallocate funds away from the New York City Police Department, which is the basis of defund the police. So she wanted to defund the police. So what other candidates did we have? So we got Adrian Adams wants to defund the police, doesn't support it. We have Andrew Cuomo. How does he feel about defund the police? Let's see. Recently, Andrew Cuomo came out and said that defund the police were the 3 dumbest words ever uttered in politics. But let's see where he said in 2020. Let's see what he said.
Different schools of thought. You want to say, oh, no, which do you think is the no-brainer? Is it a no-brainer to put more police? Or is it a no-brainer to say defund the police? You know, they're both legitimate schools of thought.
So they're both legitimate schools of thought. You know, they're both legitimate schools of thought. He thought it was a legitimate school of thought to say defund the police. Now that he's running for mayor, he wants to hire 5,000 more cops. Here's your other option. Andrew Cuomo, good guy. Is this the guy we should be running for mayor?
First of all, it's such a shame that we've come to this pinnacle point in history. Now, with New York City, we have a mayor that has overwhelmingly his allegations in his indictment are the preponderance of evidence just in that indictment. If anybody has an opportunity to read it, the preponderance of evidence in the indictment has been met. But in a criminal case, we have to have beyond reasonable doubt. The Department of Justice has removed those charges against Eric Adams. Eric Adams has destroyed the city with the appearance of impropriety, private contracts. We're running a criminal enterprise this administration. And his largest opponent, who potentially could take this whole entire race and be your next mayor, is Governor Andrew Cuomo, who destroyed not just the city, the entire state during COVID. Locked it down to where it was complete communism and took the lives of many that were in nursing homes, including my father. And this is the man that we're going to have in New York City, who also said that we had to have reform by a particular date when it came to policing back then. So he is at the front of this defund the police movement. When he tells you as far as there's different schools of thought, his school of thought is to defund the police.
Yeah, but then we got Eric Adams, and he's been doing a great job on public safety, right? We just showed you the violent crime rate from 2018 all the way to now. We showed you where when he took over as mayor, and it basically skyrocketed. But he said all the right things, right? But Eric Adams didn't say defund the police. That's what the New York Post is going to tell you. That's what Fox is going to tell you. That's what Donald Trump's going to tell you. That's what Tom Homan's going to tell you. They're all going to tell you, no, Eric Adams never said that. Eric Adams never did that. He's by far failed. When we look at his administration, he makes Bill de Blasio look like Ronald Reagan. He makes Bill de Blasio look like Rudy Giuliani. The crime rate under Eric Adams is disgusting. Complete failure. But let's see. Maybe we should vote for Eric Adams. Let's see how Eric Adams felt about defund the police in 2020.
News last month that said Eric Adams, the only former cop running for mayor, calls for NYPD budget cuts. So that tells me that you are for defunding the police. And what kind of cuts would you like to see?
And this is very interesting. That's why these conversations are so important. We can cut anywhere from $600 million to $1 billion. And here's why. Think about this for a moment, sister. You tell a plumber to fix your pipes in the house, but you come there every day and he's watering the garden. You say, man, I didn't hire you to do that. That's what we're doing in policing. We hire police to patrol and keep our city safe, yet they're doing clerical duties. There's no reason you're in a barrier detail. There's no reason you're a telephone switchboard operator or you're in some clerical place answering news inquiries. I say, let's drop the head count without dropping the patrol strength. Allow the attrition of officers. Take these officers that are doing clerical to get your patrol strength where they're supposed to be. This would allow you to really drop the numbers. 90% of the police budget comes from manpower. Then we can switch all the overtime that they're making and use what we're using right now. Right now, officers sit in traffic court. They sit in court for crimes. There's no reason for them to sit there. When you need to interview them, put them on Zoom, put them on some of the telecommunications and have them communicate and cut your overtime. Even at parades, we need to change the assignments of police officers. I don't need you making overtime sitting at a parade or street fair. There's no reason for that. Let's have a civilian population that's trained in crowd control. Police officers don't have to respond to traffic accidents. Police officers don't have to respond to aided. There are things that our police department should not be doing, mental health issues that's nonviolent. So we need to reshape public safety. We're addicted to 911. We're like 911 crackheads. Every time.
I don't know. It sounds like he wanted to take $1 billion out of the NYPD, which was the basis of the defund the police movement. So Eric Adams did support defund the police. He also doesn't believe cops should be responding to anything. It sounds like someone that has no idea how police work happens, because obviously he doesn't. And he wants a civilian population to police protests and parades and handle crowd control when his armed police department has failed miserably at controlling crowds.
Well, I tell you what, now I know where John Shell gets his imaging from. It's from Eric Adams, because Eric Adams, he's not for defunding the police. He's for reshaping the police, right? Because when Ed Caban had his phones removed, that wasn't a raid, John. You don't understand. That wasn't a raid. He wasn't in his underwear. He had pants on. It wasn't a raid. Eric Adams doesn't want to defund the police. He just wants to reshape it. And then Mickey McMurphy, is that it? Mickey McMurphy, shout out to you, brother, says he wanted a civilian army. That's exactly what he wants. And you know what? Having a civilian army, what is that? Defunding the police. Let's remove all this manpower. What do you tell you? We don't need all this manpower. We can have civilians do it. We don't need police officers. And you know what? He's right. And what he said he wanted to do, he did. You don't need police officers because you don't have any. Retired Detective Mike Smith, who's on this, I can tell you right now, there is a diminished detective union in the police department not able to handle cases. And who are those detectives? They're cops. We don't have enough cops to do the job. Eric Adams told us a while back, that's okay. We have a mass exodus. It's not a big deal. Not worried about it. We'll diversify the department. It's so diversified, we don't even have anybody left.
But don't worry. We also got, all right, so Andrew Cuomo wanted to defund the police. Eric Adams wanted to defund the police. Adrian Adams wanted to defund the police. We have the other dope from Park Slope, Brad Landa. Let's see what Brad Landa had to say in 2020. Brad Landa, here's a tweet from Brad Landa. This is on June 18th of 2020. Today's legislation is just one set of modest but necessary steps. Next week, we'll be back. New York City Council to adopt the fiscal year 21 budget. Following advocates include change the NYPD. We should cut at least $1 billion from the NYPD budget to invest in our communities. So the now New York City comptroller, when he was in city council, who has recently came out and said that he's going to keep Jessica Tisch as part, like that, by the way, that's his only public safety plan, is he's going to keep Jessica Tisch. He's going to keep a billionaire heiress. I was thinking about running. I was going to have Paris Hilton or Ivanka Trump be my police commissioner, but Brad Lander wants Jessica Tisch to be his. But in 2020, he wanted to defund the police. So defund the police, Lander.
I'll take Paris Hilton at this point. She's nicer to look at than Jessica Tisch.
What about Ivanka? Would you had taken Ivanka?
Absolutely. You think they could tell bedtime stories? I think if I was a child, I would have to tell bedtime stories more than Jessica Tisch.
I don't know, but if I was Jared Kushner, I would watch out, because I just saw that she's doing jiu-jitsu lessons. Ivanka Trump's doing jiu-jitsu lessons with the same one that Tom Brady hired for Giselle, who's now her boyfriend. I don't think it's a good move, Jared.
I think I'll stay away from that one. I think we identified that.
Yeah.
Rob Lukash, shout out to you, brother. Finest Unfiltered family. He says, and he's absolutely right. When you hear Adam speak like that, you would assume he has no police experience. I mean, this is coming from a former police captain. If you are a police enthusiast, friend of the podcast, if you have no police experience yourself, you must listen to Eric Adams like, wow, this guy was actually a cop. He wore the uniform. He has no real take on police work because he hasn't done it. He was busy being a rebel rouser. He had agenda since the day he came on the job. There's plenty of people who have agendas, but Eric Adams, he had agenda from day one, and that agenda continues. Eric Adams was always a rebel rouser. He's a rebel rouser right now. He's caused a lot of problems for New York City. And you see it here. I mean, presented forward evidence showing you the path forward, reshaping the police. That's what he does. It's a play on words. This is all semantics. It's defunding the police. Eric Adams is not utilizing the police department for public safety. He's playing the same game. Defund the police. They're all doing it. He's no different than Brad Lander. He's no different than Cuomo. It's just who do you want? Listen, I tell you right now, for this podcast, Eric Adams is great. Give us 4 more years. We got more. We got a lot of content. He's a character. He'll make us laugh. But do you really want Eric Adams for New York City? I mean, listen, I hate to tell you, but Bill de Blasio is looking pretty good compared to Eric Adams. And I hated him. But I tell you what, he's looking like a shiny quarter compared to Eric Adams.
Yeah, I mean, but we have to sit there. Like, this is our thing. We got billionaire heiresses. So Jessica Tisch more than likely is going to get the same jiu-jitsu coach that Tom Brady got for his wife also. So her marriage might also be in jeopardy because we know that they're good friends, right? Her and Ivanka Trump, right? So that's how the Adams-Trump thing, right? We know that, right? But so now we have the Democrats have a good, by the way, the month before Donald Trump got elected, Eric Adams had stated the Democrats have a good public safety product. The month before, with violent crime skyrocketing in New York City and nationwide. They have a good. So we have defund the police Cuomo, defund the police Eric Adams, defund the police Adrian Adams, defund the police Brad Lander. But the Democrats, who else we got? We got Scott Stringer. Let's see what Scott Stringer, when he was the controller of New York City in 2020, thought about the defund the police movement. Let's see. Oh, here it is. Comptroller Scott Stringer to Mayor Bill de Blasio cut $1.1 billion in the NYPD spending over 4 years and reinvest in vulnerable communities and vital services. June 4th, 2020. Eric, you know that date well, don't you?
I couldn't stop laughing when I saw that date. June 4th, sure. I lost 20 vacation days. But you know what? It was worth it because it kept people safe. That was an all-out riot. I got the polls for 7.5 hours in regards to that incident, and they kept saying it was a riot. They didn't like it, and I'll still say it. That was a riot, not a protest. Out of control. Great day, June 4, 2020. They were also screaming to fund the police that day too. Thank you very much.
So, but then we got Jessica Ramos because the Democrats have a great public safety product. Jessica Ramos is going to look at rehiring Marlon Bethel and myself and the rest of you unvaccinated people. But first, she's going to consult with a doctor because she doesn't know how we're still alive. She wants to make sure that we're not a danger to everybody. But let's see what Jessica Ramos thought in 2020. Maybe Jessica Ramos should be the Democratic
Wait a
nominee.
minute. You weren't doing sex parties?
No, we weren't taking drug fueled. We weren't taking ecstasy and having drug fueled sex orgies, deviant sex with men and women, regardless of their status, their vaccine status, by the way. We must add there, regardless of the vaccine status, because like the good Dr. Jay Walking said, there is no difference between a vaccinated person and a person who was previously infected. So it was okay to have deviant sex with men and women unprotected while taking ecstasy. So we know
that's why, because when you take ecstasy, you're in a different realm. See, again, you're not understand. You're in a different realm, so it changes things, right? If you didn't have ecstasy, then it would, and then had like a special oil. I think that's what helps also. They have special oil. It's better for maybe we're getting too far deep into this, but yeah, I think that's what it is. Those sex parties are different. They keep everything clean there. Someone comes and cleans it afterwards. Must be a whole cleanup crew. It must
freak off lube.
The
finest unfiltered freak off lube.
Do you think at these sex parties they use the mask from Sheriff Miranda, the invisible mask? Do you think they had that one? Those are good. They must have had the invisible mask.
That was a good one. That's why he got the sheriff position. He invented the invisible mask. It was a card, and on the card, it said that it protected you from COVID-19. So you could just wear the card on your lapel. And then you didn't have to wear a mask, so you could flout all the COVID rules while the New York City sheriff was shutting down businesses for not enforcing mask rules.
So they must have invisible condoms too. You don't need condoms. You have the invisible condoms. Carry a card. I got a card. I don't need a condom. I'm good.
I got it right here.
That's it. See. But the cops, they might be dirty. They need to go to the doctor. They might be dirty. We don't know what the cops were doing. Have to check them at the doctor. Maybe your mind was dirty because you're a cop. You were thinking, you were thinking bad. You were thinking devious thoughts. You want to go out there and arrest and summons people for jaywalking because you're a cop. You got a bad mindset.
Yeah. So Jessica Ramos, she maybe it's her. Like she's going to consult with the doctors. So I'll give her kudos because she's going to get some medical advice. So let's see where she was in 2020. Oh, let's see. She wanted to do 10 new police reforms. Let's see. She wanted to repeal 50A. Create a special investigation for police officer-related deaths. She wanted to permit recording videos of police activity, which was always allowed, which I don't know what the hell she's talking about. She wanted the the Eric Garner Anti-Chokehold Act, so police can't use chokehold. She wanted to create law enforcement misconduct investigative offices. She wanted police enforcement demographic data to be published. She wanted to ban misuse of calling 911 based upon someone's race, which means that you can no longer give, if you're a victim of a robbery by a male black, you can't tell the 911 operator that you were the race of someone's color so that they could not transmit that the perpetrator was a male black so that the police could not apprehend them. She wanted to also access medical and mental health care while in custody. She wanted to require the state police to wear body cameras, and she wanted the police must report each time they use their guns and weapons, which was already a thing. So that's what Jessica Ramos did. On top of, guess what she wanted to do? Defund the NYPD. So we have defund the police Eric Adams, defund the police Andrew Cuomo, defund the police Adrian Adams, defund the police Scott Stringer, defund the police Jessica Ramos. I think we're missing somebody, though.
Here's before we get into who we're missing here. Now we need to answer the question of who did it better. That's who we should vote for. Who did it better? Who put the best effort and actually accomplished the mission of defunding the police? I would say it's Eric Adams. Eric Adams is number one because he actually is the mayor and he actually created the pathway to where we're at right now. He terminated Marlon Bethel. Many others are been suffering out there right now. Who did it better? I say Eric Adams.
Well, I've been saying for a long time, and nobody grabs it, and everyone looks at me like I had 10 heads, and I'm like, Eric Adams is the king of the defund the police movement. So defund the police was more than just lowering the budget. It was completely emasculating the NYPD and lowering the headcount. And no one has lowered the headcount more than Eric Adams. Nobody. He took the headcount of the NYPD. I mean, it's unbelievable where we're at now. We're at pre-2001 levels. I mean, all of our specialty units are almost gone. You know, it's funny to listen to him say it. He was talking about how he didn't want cops in administrative positions, and yet when he came in, he put all of his friends in administrative positions. And there were actually more cops in administrative positions in 3 years under Eric Adams than there were prior to him coming in. And now there are less cops overall than there were prior to him coming in. Again, he's oversaw the biggest exodus of police officers in New York City history. More cops have retired, have resigned, meaning they get no benefits, or have vested out, retired early than at any other point in New York City history. So he is the king nationwide of defund the police. The king.
Yeah, but I'm going to have to use a line here. Yeah, but Mo, he got us a contract, man. He got us a contract, dude. We make more money now. Eric Adams is good. We make money. Make so much money. I get a lot of overtime. I haven't seen my wife in a year. It's great. I'm always at work. Is it really great? Do you see it now? To the cops out there who've called John and myself numerous times, telling us how great Eric Adams is. Do you see it now? Have we not painted the picture for you? I mean, when you were young, remember Bob Ross tell you, I'm going to paint a little tree. I'm going to paint this whole thing. And then you get the final outcome. You got the final outcome. We're showing you. Eric Adams is telling you, I'm going to get rid of this. Manpower, this. Now look, you got the full painting. He defunded the police. He defunded you. That's why you're working so many hours. That's why you burn the candle at both ends and you're exhausted and you're never home and you haven't even seen your wife in a year and someone else is probably taking care of your wife for you because you're always at work. Defund the police.
Well, just get her the jiu-jitsu coach that Ivanka Trump's using, that Giselle Bundchen used. That, Jessica Tisch, you should get him, He's good.
Well, she'll be a purple belt.
He doesn't like messing with people's wives at all. Just Tom Brady.
She'll be a purple belt in 2 years, no problem. I never heard such a thing. It's insane.
So, but then we got the socialist, right? We got the socialist candidate. What's his name? Zohran Mamdani, who actually wanted to come on the podcast and then chickened out. Couldn't handle it because he doesn't have a public safety platform at all. So where was he? 2020. Let's see. Let's see where Zohran Mamdani was on defund the police. Zohran Mamdani. Here's a tweet. This is June 5th, 2020. This is a day after the riot in the Mount Haven section of the Bronx that you were at, Eric. Defunding the police is ultimately about creating balance. As Mamdani puts it, it isn't about eliminating everything that creates harm in our society or an invitation for chaos. Rather, it's a chance to respond to the problems differently than we have. So, defund the police Cuomo, defund the police Scott Stringer, defund the police Eric Adams, defund the police Adrian Adams, defund the police Brad Lander, defund the police Jessica Ramos, defund the police Zohran Mamdani.
And Scott Stringer.
And Scott Stringer. I said Stringer.
Oh, you did? Oh.
I said Stringer. Yeah. What do you think about Zohan? Defunding the police isn't about defunding the police. It's about doing things differently.
That's okay. We'll defund the police, but we'll fund everybody else. We're going to get baby baskets and bread baskets, and everybody else is going to get taken care of and paid for. But we're not going to have police. We don't need police, John. You know why? Because we're getting rid of Jay Walking. That's gone. Let's get rid of D-Week. Drone Ranger, throw it out right here. More whites are getting arrested. I want I want to get rid of DWI, which is driving while intoxicated, if anybody wants to know what that is. I want to get rid of prostitution. There are more females being arrested for prostitution. I have a real problem with that. Why are we not arresting the same amount of males as females for prostitution? Let's get rid of prostitution. You know what? More black men are being arrested for murder. Let's get rid of murder. That's racist. You know what, John? I think 96 or 97% of persons of interest arrested in New York City are black and brown. I want murder. Murder should be legalized. What do you think?
I think most importantly, first we defund the police, then we legalize everything.
That's it. We legalize everything. We'll have that's the key to prosperity. Forget about public safety. Just, you know what? You should be free to live as you want. And what we will do is, what we need to do is forget about rules. We need to have better signage. So we could put signs everywhere. Forget about don't walk and walk. Get rid of that sign. We'll put up a sign. Please do not murder. Please do not steal. In this zone, do not carry a gun. Signs work. I think signs will be the key to success.
So Whitney Tilson, billionaire, was on this podcast. He did not call for defunding the police in 2020, but so he's the only Democratic candidate for mayor that hasn't. There is one more Democratic mayor candidate. There is one more, Zelnor Myrie, State Senator Zelnor Myrie. Let's see where Zelnor Myrie stood in 2020. Let's see. Maybe Zelnor has some common sense.
That will actually keep us safer without having putting in more money for the police, actually taking some away. I think there's 150A that I would like for you to talk about a bit.
Yeah, so thank you for that question. And I think this is a really important point in that there is a spectrum of interpretation on what defund means or what abolition means. And I think when you take the words on their face, it's pretty simple. But I think it's more complex and it's more nuanced than that. The folks who are abolitionists, there are some folks that do feel that we need no policing whatsoever. I don't believe that's representative of most of what abolitionists feel. They are concerned about a different model of public safety, one that does not prioritize law enforcement, but one that is preventative and one that is an investment into the community. But that interpretation of what public safety looks like is very ingrained in the community and in our politics. We have to acknowledge that it was just in 2014 that a progressive city council voted to put thousands of more cops on the streets. And this was them responding to their communities who did not feel safe. And I don't think people are not being genuine when they say, when I see more cops, that makes me feel safe. That is what people are used to. Those are the structures that have been held up. So when you have that sort of level of ingraining of what public safety looks like, politically, even an incremental change, like let's make public the disciplinary records, meets massive opposition. And so when we when we first introduced the repeal of 50A many years ago, it was dead on arrival, had no shot of happening. And even when the Democrats came into the majority, that's when I entered the state Senate, it was still very tough to get across, not because of the Republican opposition. They're going to be sort of diametrically opposed, but because there were Democrats that were opposed to the revealing of disciplinary records for law enforcement, responding again to the strength of the police union and some of those forces. What changed that was what happened last summer. And it is instructive for how I think we should move forward. There was so many people on the streets, so many people making calls, so many people forcing us to talk about this issue, that a bill that was dead on arrival ended up being passed 12 days after I was pepper sprayed. And I think it, again, 50A was a great step forward. I'm very proud to have been part of that. But 50A alone will not reform the police and will not in and of itself make us safer. What I believe actually makes us safer is something we passed this year, which was the Community Violence Intervention and Prevention Act. And what that was here is a non-police solution to the violence and crime in our community. Let's dedicate our dollars to our violence interrupters, our community-based violence intervention programs, and our hospital-based intervention programs. We declared gun violence a public health crisis for the first time in the state's history, and we believe we're the only state in the nation to have done so.
All right, enough of that. So not only does he support defunding the police, he actually believes abolition of the police is a good thing, and he wants to move away the funding from the police to violence interventions. The program where everywhere it's implemented, crime has skyrocketed. There's zero metrics to understand how this program that's been deemed a success by the previous presidential administration and this mayor that's currently in office right now in New York City and Bill de Blasio, how that was deemed a success, we have no idea because crime has skyrocketed. Who's a violence intervention, how they're paid, what their duties are, what's their vaccine status, are they subject to any rules and regulations, how many hours a day do they work, how much money do they earn, what are the metrics to see why they're getting paid. All of that is shrouded in mystery. So every Democrat candidate, with the exception of billionaire Whitney Tilson, supported the defund the police movement. And some, like Zelnor, actually thinks that abolition is a legitimate school of thought.
I'm listening to him and I'm thinking to myself, is he actually referring to people that want to defund the police as abolitionists, or did you mean absolutist? Because abolitionists worked to end slavery. So you're saying the police department is enslaving the city to control public safety. This is insanity that there's people like this that are actually running for the mayor of New York City. And then we have to actually say that gun violence is a public health crisis. This is insane. I just lost minutes of my life listening to Kaz Daughtry's twin. A bunch of people in the comments here put it's Kaz, looks like Kaz Daughtry. He really does. This is just complete insanity. Are you talking about, Zelnor, are you talking about abolitionist or are you talking about absolutist? I'm not sure if you actually understood your own explanation. I think you mean absolutist. Because if you're saying they're abolitionists, you're saying that the police department is enslaving the people. This is insane, John. Did you actually listen to what he's saying? This is bizarre.
Listen, I'll say right now, he sounds like Kaz Daughtry. They sound like that same kid. Like they were probably playing Call of Duty together. I would not be shocked at all. No, this was the school of thought by Democrats in 2020, and we've proved it here. Overwhelmingly, every mayoral candidate overwhelmingly supported defunding the police. Overwhelmingly, right? And how has that worked out? We showed you the violent crime rate. We showed you what happened. New York City violent crime has skyrocketed, and even as of today, it has not dropped, even though we know that the NYPD is fudging numbers. So God only knows what the real violent crime rate is. God only knows. The NYPD doesn't even know.
And by the way, he mentions those violence interrupters. How much do they get paid? Where are they? What do they do? It's like the unwritten. This is like this unwritten unit. We never even heard anything about it. Like, as far as what I heard they make an astronomical salary. It's associated with criminals. And what do we have any evidence of the byproduct or results? What did we yield from this? What was the outcome? I haven't seen any data. Have you? I haven't seen any data on this.
I haven't seen any data from any of them on anything. The violence intervention program, in my opinion, is a huge failure. It's a huge waste of money. If there is a Doge-style government in New York City or in this country, Elon Musk, you should be looking at the violence intervention program. That should have been the first thing you should have been looking at. And you should go to and start looking at it now. We're still wasting billions of dollars.
Spot on, John.
We're wasting billions of dollars on that program. Oh, yeah, I know. I get it, Elon. You don't want to be called a racist either. I get it. I understand. You got enough heat going on right he's got enough heat.
John,
so,
you're spot on, right? What's the accounting on that? I agree with you. I think you nailed it. What is the accounting on that? I would love to know.
There is none. There's never been. From the minute it was implemented, gun violence has risen. Numerous people involved in the violence intervention program were actively and are actively involved in being investigated for not only drug sales, but the movement of firearms, the use of firearms, gang activity. It's completely, the whole thing's a joke. The whole thing is an absolute joke. It's a huge waste of money. It is a grift. It is payback. It is this whole. Who do you think Adams was talking about when he said we're going to have civilians do the crowd control? That's what he was talking about. He's talking about giving the money to the boys in the hood. That's all he was talking about. And how has that worked out for policing? Let's see. Now we have a mayor who doesn't have a federal clearance to know what's going to happen as it relates to terrorism in New York City, cannot get intel. We have numerous high-ranking NYPD officials, including at one point 2 NYPD police commissioners, along with the mayor and the entire upper echelon of the NYPD, who didn't have federal clearance to know what's happening with going on with terrorism. But don't worry, because we have a counterterrorism unit, right? So let's see how the counterterrorism unit's faring. Let's see, because maybe I'm sure that's doing well, right? I'm sure.
About 150 people in counterterrorism after 9/11. There's 12 detectives in counterterrorism right now.
Are things falling through the cracks?
Not yet, but the
I'm just going to stop it right there. 150 people, 150 detectives were in counterterrorism after 9/11. There's 12. Are things falling through the cracks? I'm going to answer for that for you, Scott. 100% they're falling through the cracks because the 12 people that are there aren't even at their desk. Where are they? They're out at a transit post. Are things falling through the cracks? You better be damn sure that things are falling through the cracks.
That's an 80% decrease in the manpower. That's insane. 150 comparison to 12. But maybe, John, maybe there's no issues with counterterrorism right now. New York City is so safe. We don't have to worry under Eric Adams. And we don't have to worry with these defund the police candidates for mayor because they got it right. They got it right. We're going to have civilian armies, violence interrupters. We don't need police. Why do you need police? They're abolitionists. We don't need them. We don't need them. We have people out there that are abolitionists. They're going to make sure that we end slavery because the police department enslaves jaywalkers. The police department enslaves prostitutes. The police department enslaves people that are driving drunk. Can we get rid of all crime, please? Let's get rid of this whole template. Free for all.
Rich Kentaff says cracked, more like the Grand Canyon. 100%. Absolute joke. Absolute joke. Let's see. Maybe the police officers are doing better because we're on pace in the first 3 months of the year. I think we've already had more detectives retire than all of the previous year before. But hey, don't worry. Jessica Tisch is the police commissioner now, so everything's good. Don't worry about it. Let's see. Let's see what happened in the first 3 months of the year for police officers. Oh, yeah, there you go. 1,250 police officers retired, resigned, or vested out in the first 3 months of this year. Yeah, no, everything's fine. Everything's good, Mom. We're good. We're good. Don't worry. We just hired 1,000 unqualified candidates who over 25% of them will not even make it through the academy. Another 20% will be gone in the first 6 months, but we're good. Don't worry. Jessica Tisch is the police commissioner. Everything is good.
Wait a minute. Are you saying that we should sound the alarm? Are you saying there's a problem that we lost 1,250 police officers and we just replaced them with 1,000 with 24 college credits and they don't have to run? I don't see any problems. First of all, the 24 college credits I agree with, but they don't even have to run. Now we replaced the 250 with 1,000 police officers that can't run a mile and a half. We don't need it. It's not necessary because what? Why? We're not. What do we need to run after jaywalkers? No. We got it all set in motion. We have the violence interrupters. We have a civilian army. We're good.
But wait, listen, this is leadership, though. This is my favorite thing. It's a little bit off topic, but I never forget this as long as I live. And I keep getting from a lot of different people that if I don't support Cuomo, I'm helping a socialist to become the mayor of New York City. So I have to support Cuomo.
These are your choices.
If I support Sliwa or I support Jim Walden, I am not supporting Cuomo, which is ultimately means I'm supporting a socialist. And I asked those same people, well, if I would have threw my name in the hat, does that mean that I was supporting a socialist? Because I think that New York City should have been different, right? But let's see how great a leadership Andrew Cuomo. Maybe you guys remember this. This is when Andrew Cuomo dictated what is food. He thought as the governor of New York City, he could tell you what is substantive food.
To be a bar, you had to have food available. Soups, sandwiches, etc. More than just hors d'oeuvres, chicken wings. You had to have some substantive food. The lowest level of substantive food were sandwiches. To be a bar,
sandwiches. Remember they made the Cuomo chips? So chicken wings in 2020 weren't considered food. How many of you guys have went out to a bar or a restaurant and really weren't that hungry, but you were hungry? Like, I'm just going to get chicken wings. That's not food. It had the lowest amount of substantive food is a sandwich. That's if you're not behind him, you're behind the socialist. Does he sound pretty conservative to you? Does he sound moderate to you?
Maybe if he didn't call them chicken wings. If you call them buffalo wings, then maybe it would be food. But since he called them chicken wings, it's not food. This is the most ridiculous thing that we need someone to tell us what constitutes food to make something a bar. This was the most ridiculous thing. If you look at this, you can look back and say, wow, did we actually live through COVID? It was just complete insanity as we were going through, like, wow, is this really happening? We're chaining up basketball nets so that kids can't go out and play for social distancing. Try to say that 10 times. Well, we have Dr. Vollmer out there having sex parties. What we should have been doing is out pumping ecstasy to everybody. If you have ecstasy, you're okay. You can do whatever you want because it's a different realm. You're not part of the matrix, Take us out of this matrix. This is absolutely ridiculous.
So, but don't worry, while Andrew Cuomo, who's not a socialist and not a progressive and not a dictator, right? Because if you don't support him, remember, you're supporting the socialists. Remember that. So while he was locking old people in nursing homes, he was keeping healthy people from treatment. He was keeping restaurants closed. He was dictating what is substantive food. He was calling for ventilators. What am I going to do with 100 ventilators, right? When he was doing all that, he was listening to people like Alec Baldwin. What was Alec Baldwin calling for? Alec Baldwin was calling on Governor Cuomo to open up the jails. And guess what? He did. And listen to how passionate Alec Baldwin was about it. Listen to it.
As this pandemic spreads, public health and safety and basic moral decency demand that you use your authority to issue clemency to those most vulnerable in our state prisons and reduce the overall population. Releasing the elderly, pregnant women, and others who are immunocompromised, as well as anyone within a year of their release dates, would show great leadership. And that's what New York needs now.
And so Andrew Cuomo listened. So while he locked your grandmother and your parents in nursing homes and essentially killed them, he was letting out criminals from the jails and closing prisons across New York State.
Yeah, that's who I want to take advice from. I want to take advice from Alec Baldwin. That's someone that I want to get my advice from. This is insanity. This is New York City. This is New York State. It's crazy to the point that people are locked in. Like, these are your choices, right? It's almost like this is all done by design. Let's put the craziest people so you're voting for. Like, oh, I'll just pick someone that seems like the most decent out of the crazies, because that's what it's coming down to. This is what the Democrats put up. And let's see what our Republicans are going to put up. We know the battle that we're going to have. It's pretty much going to come down to Eric Adams or former Governor Andrew Cuomo. So who do you want? You want someone that's under indictment and had the charges dropped and wants to reshape the police, or someone who tells you, defunding the police could be looked at one way and it could be looked at another? This is what you're left with in New York City. This is just out of control. We have a system in New York City that has been designed, and I have to, give credit to Sal Greco. Shout out to you, brother. He always says that they target low information people, and they do, because we don't get enough people out there to vote. So if we get low information people to get out there and vote, it's a lock and they win. And this defund the police movement is not going to stop. It's not slowing down. If anything, it's actually propelling and it's actually getting some steam. And New York City Council is at the front of it. New York City Council has been at the front of this. And whoever becomes mayor with defund the police is teaming up with City Council. And this is going to be even further worse than what we see right now. 12 detectives, that's going to be 0. Good luck in New York City for your public safety, for potential violent perpetrators out there, and the threats of counterterrorism. Because if you think that outside entities that want to do harm to this country, and particularly New York City, are not watching, then you're mistaken. They're watching right now and saying, look at these idiots right now. Look at the holes in New York City. It's a target, and it's ripe for terrorism acts as we speak.
So yesterday, all the mayoral candidates, with the exception of Eric Adams and Andrew Cuomo, held a funeral, a mock funeral for the COVID deaths that happened in the nursing home as a result of Andrew Cuomo's horrible, horrible, tyrannical policies. I personally think it was political theater. I think it was a bad look on Curtis Sliwa and Jim Walden to even attend. I wouldn't have attended. Because the Democrats that were there, Adrian Adams, Eleanor Myrie, Brad Lander, and the rest of them, are all full of shit because they said absolutely nothing while it was happening. So 5 years later, now that he throws his name in the mayoral race, they're going to use this as a talking point. So here's a mayoral candidate, Adrian Adams. Let's see what she had to say about it.
Loved ones that did not have to go like this, but were victims of a governor who cared not for you or your families. He owes you an apology, Andrew. Be accountable to these families. Apologize. Meet with them. Feel their grief. Understand what you've done. I won't forget. They won't forget. We're going to stand up and we're going to memorialize our loved ones now. Loved ones.
So to be fair, and I'll give Curtis Sliwa, I personally think Curtis Sliwa has a great shot of winning. I do. So, but to be fair, Curtis Sliwa actually was saying things in 2020. He was saying things in 2021. He was saying things in 2022. He was saying things in 2023. They were not, which is why I don't know why he was standing on the platform with them.
Unfortunately, I think that Curtis Sliwa doesn't have a shot in hell. I think that he did say the right things in 2020. He did say the right things going forward. But I really don't think he has a shot in hell. I don't think that they take him seriously, unfortunately. And I think that the Republicans are not getting behind him. I mean, is the conservative line getting behind Curtis Sliwa? We haven't heard anything. You and I were talking about this the other day where people are actually asking, who is the Republican candidate? And that's the point we're at. If people are asking who is the Republican candidate, means that Curtis Sliwa has not gotten enough steam at this point. I don't think they take him seriously. It's unfortunate. But Sal Greco, shout out to you again, low information voters. The low information voters are the ones that are watching this right now because they want the entertainment. This is pure entertainment. That's what this is. Because people that have any caliber or any sense of emotional intelligence, political intelligence, are saying, this is absolutely ridiculous. I'm not even watching these clowns. I got work to do. I got bigger things to worry about. But it's low information. People are hanging on to this going, oh, wow, look. They really want what's best for the city. And it's a big show. It's exactly what you said, political theater. It's just a show. And if anything, it's just entertainment.
So if you look at certain polls, though, Sliwa is leading. He'll lead. He'll lead because the Republican support will outweigh all of the Democrats who are dividing and conquering. With that being said, the Republican Party, and I'll blame Curtis Sliwa as well. I think he's doing a horrible job at messaging. I think his campaign is basically non-existent at this point. He should be on this show. He should be on the Sal Greco show. He should be doing a lot of different events other than what he's doing. I think his fundraising apparatus is not there at all. I don't think he's out there. I think he does have a shot at winning. I just think that the Republicans have abandoned him, and they have abandoned New York, and it's unfortunate. This is what happens in New York City is you're basically running on your own if you're running as a moderate or as a Republican. So where's the big money? Where's the big media? Haven't seen it behind him at all. I do think he has a shot at winning because the field is so crowded. I do. So, yeah, and Stephen S. says it here. Curtis should be on the show. Absolutely he should be. He should be reaching out left and right. I got to get on there. Let me get on there with you guys. Let me get on there. And he's not, which tells me a lot. It tells me a lot about. I haven't heard really strong plans. He has said he will compensate and reinstate, but what's your public safety plan look like? Who's your police commissioner? What other policies are you going to do? What are you going to do to get the mentally ill and the homeless off the streets? Haven't heard it. The only person I've heard plans from is Jim Walden. That is it. And Jim Walden's not getting the traction that he needs either. So it's unfortunate. So, but I do want to give a big shout out to Joanne Ariola, the new minority leader in city council, went on New York One yesterday in focus with Cheryl Willis, and she was talking about our brother, Marlon Bethel. So here's Joanne Ariola.
Let's begin today's conversation with Queens Council member and minority leader, Joanne Ariola. Council member, thanks for being here.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
This month marks 5 years since the pandemic, and you are fighting to get municipal workers, actually all workers who were fired for not taking the vaccine, reinstated. And you have publicly pointed to the case, and I want to show his picture here, NYPD Detective Marlon Bethel. He was fired after 15 years on the job. This is something that you are very passionate about. Give us an update on who's being reinstated and who's not.
We've been working on this since I became elected, and we had a meeting with Bravest for Choice. They are a firefighter organization, and we could not believe that valid medical accommodations and as well as religious accommodations were not being given. And we fought hard for them and were able to get a number of them back on. But there are so many more that are not back on. And I'm not going to stop until each and every municipal worker has their job back. There's no reason for them not to have their job back anymore. The mandates have been lifted. They have won their Article 78s in court. The court has mandated them to come back to work, yet the law department appeals each and every case.
Really?
Why? Look at the expense to the taxpayer when they could just take this worker back on. We're at a reduction in headcount in all of the city agencies, and yet we have so many workers who want to come back to work and can't.
So explain why you said about 100 have been reinstated.
Yes.
Many more have not. How could they reinstate some and not the others?
Well, that's a very good question.
Yeah.
There is no clear policy. We ask that question all the time. Why are some reinstated and others not? Why do some have to sign a waiver that they won't sue the city and others don't? There's no clear policy, and we've been asking for policy from the law department, and we cannot seem to get it.
Have you taken this to Governor Hochul?
We've taken it as far as we've sent letters to Governor Hochul. We've sent letters to the new administration for the federal government. The president did this for federal workers. There's no reason it shouldn't be done for city workers and state workers. We've gone to the mayor with this, and we're hoping that something moves the needle for these people. Do you know that some are living in their cars, some are in shelters, some are living on the charity of family because they've been out of work?
I'm glad you're staying on top of it. We will too. You're also
awesome interview, Joanne Ariola. Shout out to you. Shout out to you. Eric Adams, say his name, remember his name, Marlon Bethel, and many others that are just like him. Marlon Bethel is the face of this vaccine mandate. Marlon Bethel, look at that picture of Marlon Bethel. Marlon Bethel was an experienced investigator. He was a detective. He was a real detective. He's not one of these detectives that was promoted for not doing actual detective work. Marlon Bethel did investigative work then, and he does it now for the finest Unfiltered family. Marlon Bethel deserves to be reinstated, compensated, and vindicated. He is them, and they are him. Marlon Bethel, absolutely. It's just a shame. So that's why I said earlier, who did it better? Who defunded the police the best? And the answer is Eric Adams, because some of them want to defund the police. Now, Adrian Adams has a stake in that in city council, but Eric Adams actually defunded the police because she said it right here, Joanne Ariel. Every case where they won on the Article 78, they're appealing it. Who's at the head of that? Who's the leadership of that? That's Eric Adams utilizing corporation counsel, taxpayer money to fight these cases. He defunded the police. So think about that. He didn't reshape it. He defunded it. And not only did you remove 1,250 of your finest police officers, you replaced them with 1,000 that are not qualified. And Marlon Bethel is more than qualified. He thrived then. He will thrive now. And if you don't take Marlon Bethel back and the others that are just like him, living out of their cars, that is an epic fail. He defunded the police. So if you vote for Eric Adams or any of these other clowns, you defunded the police too.
Absolutely. Last topic before we get out of here. We're going on about 2 hours, 10 minutes. Something came out 2 days ago from our friend Nick Sotor. Nick is like the king of X spaces on X. Got a few 100,000 followers. Every time he does an X space, a few 100,000 people in there. Myself, Eric, Sal have all spoken on his spaces. Independent reporter. Definitely a pro-Trump guy. I definitely watch a lot of the stuff that he posts as well, but he broke down basically calling out all of these so-called MAGA and conservative influences and showed posts where they were all pushing an anti-soda agenda. You know, Ian Miles Chong, Clown World, all of these big million follower accounts who are all posting information in lockstep. Right? They claim to be independent accounts, but they're not. So I looked at this thread yesterday from Ian Smith. Some of you probably know Ian. He was a gym owner in New Jersey, who the New Jersey governor at the time was trying to shut down his gym, and he refused to comply, and he was hit with millions and millions in fines. He ultimately won, and the courts threw out all of those illegal actions by the state of New Jersey. And now he lives down near me in St. Augustine, Florida. So he puts this out yesterday. He puts out the conservative movement is being bought through their influences. Most have no idea who's pulling the strings or how this works. So let's break it down. This all works through companies like Influenceable. They are not only one, just the biggest. Essentially, it's a marketing and influence operation backed by political consultants, wealthy donors, and in some cases, foreign-aligned interests. We've seen that recently with Benny Johnson, where it came out that he was taking money from the Russians. And what is their goal? To manufacture support for certain agendas by paying your favorite influencers to push them. They're handing out money, scripts, and bullet points to social media personalities, political influencers, podcasts, traditional life accounts, meme pages, and patriotic content creators. These influencers then flood your feed with what looks like organic content. But behind the scenes, it's carefully coordinated campaign. No less scripted than the mainstream media they claim to fight against. They post polished videos acting like just common sense conservatism while parroting the same talking points. Defending sending billions in foreign aid. Attacking Republican Representative Thomas Massey for opposing it. Defending junk food purchases under SNAP. Justifying endless military spending abroad. This isn't honest discourse. This is weaponized marketing sold as authenticity by some nerd without a real job yapping into his or her phone. Let's be honest. When we as conservatives start supporting government welfare expansions and blank checks to foreign governments, we didn't. But now some of the loudest voices in our spaces are getting paid to make it look and sound like we did. This paid influence is to redefine what it means to be America first. He goes on and on. But I mean, you could see it clear as day. And I saw it with the attacks on Massey. I was like, this is not organic. They're all posting the same thing. Benny Johnson, DC Drano, Ian Miles Chong, all these accounts. And I've been saying for a while, a very long time, your favorite influencer is a paid propagandist. And this is just proof. The proof has finally came out. People are being seeing this now. He failed to mention the podcasts, but you have to mention the podcasts because they're pushing narratives as well. They're pushing the talking points that are going out on social media. So you have to be very careful with these supposed independent platforms. What do you think about that, Eric? It's basically the mainstream media just took over the independent media. That's what's happening.
I was just talking about it the other day. That's exactly what's happening. And now that's why it's become a religion. It's become a religion as far as if you believe in leftist politics, you know which mainstream media to watch. And if you believe in right-wing conservative, you know which media to watch. So no longer is it necessarily the truth. It's paid propaganda. And now what we're starting to see is the paid propaganda has seeped to independent podcasts. They're paid propaganda through these podcasts. There's no doubt about it. So you have to pick and choose what media you actually listen to. And I do think you should listen to the ones that are in opposition also, not for influence, but for understanding, to educate yourself and acknowledge what's actually being driven out there and the information that's being driven to the public. And just lie after lie. It's disgusting. There's no doubt about it. It's paid propaganda. It's really at the point where no longer can we trust media. You have to do your own fact checks. That's why I said earlier, Drone Ranger put up some great information, but it's come down to the point where okay, I need to see the literature on it because we can't trust that these journalists are actually putting out factual information. We can't even hold them accountable anymore because if you try to challenge a journalist and say, hey, you've lost integrity, you know what they'll tell you? They'll say, well, we're not really journalists. We're entertainment. That's what they'll say. And that's what these mainstream media are telling the public. We're entertainment. We're entertainers. So think about that. If they're entertainers, they have no liability and accountability to give the public information that is factual. They could give you misinformation, not be held accountable because they're entertainment and they're not journalists.
Yeah. I think we just went down on X. I'm thinking X probably just got attacked again. It looks like it's working fine, but we just went down on X, so I don't know what happened there. It's coming back up. It was probably just a glitch. X keeps getting attacked too. That's another thing. X keeps getting attacked, but yeah,
free space.
But that's what's going on. So like these bigger corporations, Fox, CNN, what they're seeing is independent media is taking over their thing. So what they're doing is they're just acquiring the independent media. And that's what happened. And unfortunately, a lot of people will sell out for the money. We've seen that time and time again. So just be careful of the messaging. And I'm not saying not to listen to anyone, but don't take anything, including what me and Eric are saying, as fact. Do your own research. That's it. Like whatever we're saying, like we could be telling you that all these Democrats wanted to defund the police. We show you the proof of it too. It's not like we just say it, but I mean, go out and do your own research. You know what I mean? I mean, maybe the clips we're showing aren't the full clip. Maybe they said something else after it. It was taken out of context. And again, I just think just important to highlight that because it honestly, X specifically under this administration, I think has gotten it doesn't look as organic as it used to. It looks like a lot of just propaganda out there, a lot of just the same people posting the same things. And I've unfollowed all of those large accounts, and yet they still just pop in my feed all the time, all parroting. It's almost word for word. They don't even try to change it. It's horrible to watch. It reminds me of 2020 when they had the death count. It reminds me of 2021, 2022 when they're pushing safe and effective. And it's like I'm like, shut that off. And that's happening in social media, and that's happening on these independent platforms, and it's a damn shame to watch.
Marlon says we're still down at X. Good morning, Marlon. Shout out to you, brother. So far, it looks like YouTube is still good, though. But that's the bottom line. And I think this is the only podcast. If there's another one, you hear it, great. But to my knowledge, this is the only podcast that you'll hear that we tell you we don't mind if you oppose our opinions, if you give opposition to our perspectives, if you find them polarizing, if you challenge us. It's your perception. You have a right to your opinion. And that's what this is about. This is about perspective. Just as Ron Layson put on the back of plaques for John and myself. See the plaque in the back here, the finest Unfiltered that John has above his head. He put on the back of it inscripted, your perspective matters. And that is absolutely right. everyone's perspective matters. We should respect everyone's opinion, but do the research. I agree with John. Do the research and find out, hey, maybe what they said does have some teeth to it. Or maybe what they said was taken out of context. Or maybe what they said, you know what, John and Eric, they had a good perception of something and you didn't like it. That's fine. Challenge us. We respect you. We can have opposing conversations. As I always say, opposition meets opportunity, and we should have those conversations because communication breaks barriers. I don't expect everyone to agree with us. Plenty of people, even Patrick Donahue says, I love you guys, but I don't agree with everything you say. That's what we want to hear. If you agreed with everything you said, like, oh, everything John and Eric says is amazing, come on, that would be a lie. There's a lot of things that we say that people don't agree with it, and you shouldn't agree with everything. You should have the confidence and the confidence to challenge things that you don't agree with. And that's real conversation, and that's organic. That's what we're asking for, organic and real conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. Hood Mayor says, I told y'all this since I've been on the podcast. That's why I hope y'all don't fold either. I don't think we're going to fold. Something I didn't talk about, I think it's going to come out in like the next month, so I might as well just air it out here before you guys read about it elsewhere. I got offered from a political party to run for mayor, and I turned it down. And it was in the 27th hour. Obviously, we're in, I think, the third quarter of fundraising for the New York City mayoral race. Literally zero funding behind it. It was a official party, but I turned it down, and I felt that me running would be running a campaign to lose. Even though I would never do that. I would never run to just bolster myself or my own status or this podcast and bring us national. So I turned it down because I did not want to do exactly what I've been accusing all these parties of, is running candidates to lose. If there's no fundraising apparatus, if I'm starting way late compared to everyone else, I'm a political first timer. Again, this wasn't this was completely unsolicited. I did not solicit to do this. I couldn't do that to myself and to my family. And I wouldn't do that to the voters of New York City either, because basically all I would be doing is splitting the vote from the moderates. I would be taking the vote from the moderates. Traditionally, probably the line I was being offered to run on, traditionally gets about 3% of the vote. I probably would have gotten double that, much higher, actually triple that. I probably would have got closer to the 9%, but ultimately would have no shot at running on that on just for that party. I would have also needed the support of the GOP and maybe other entities as well. So I turned that down. So before you read about that in other areas, so just on the topic of selling out, no, we're not going to be we're not going to be doing that anytime soon. So
well, since the beginning, we've been doing this for about 2.5 hours, not 2.5 hours. Well, yeah, actually, this podcast is about 2.5 hours, but we've been doing this about 2.5 years. We've never wavered. We've never backed down. We've been attacked by numerous entities since day one. We've never backed down. We never changed our narrative. We never pivoted. And the narrative is unfiltered, giving honest opinions, honest perspective. And plenty of times we've had conversations with people and they said, oh, you're wrong about this. And we said, hey, you know what? You're right. The information you provided, you're right. You made us change our school of thought. Or, you know what? We look at it from a different lens. So, so John got a legitimate offer. I was excited for him. I think it's super cool. If he decides to do it, I support him. If he doesn't, I think, I think this is the pathway to go. I think that we have made some real change and a real impact with this podcast. I think we could do more. This went from 2 talking heads to become a podcast, and now it's a network. And I think we're having some real impact, making some real change, a real voice out there to help the cops. And ultimately, it helps the public too. It works hand in hand. So, John, shout out to you. I think it's an honor and should be flattering that you were offered. Well deserved. I think, you do have the poise and for politics, you have the passion for it. So if you ever decide to do it, I support it. God bless you. And I see some of our friends and listeners support as well.
I just wanted to, again, at this point in my life, I'm not interested. I have a passion for politics, but I think what we're doing is big. I think having a true free speech platform is big. Gotten some heat about some of the people that Styles had on from in the comments and all that stuff. And I just want to say, like, we are a public safety platform. There's a lot of things and a lot of people that we don't agree with, or thoughts that we don't agree with, but we're not going to shut those voices out, right? Like Edwin Raymond is welcome on here anytime. You know, any people that are in this public safety sphere and they have this any type of what traditionally we would consider a defund the police or an anti-police agenda or a pro-criminal agenda. We want to hear those thoughts, right? We don't want to do what's been happening, which is basically create a tribal environment. It's very important to hear these things. Sal had the guy on the other day that was talking about that app. I got to sit there and say I was listening to that conversation, and I thought it was fascinating, the conversation. I didn't agree with it at all. I had about 80 million questions, but I was driving while he was on there. I didn't like the app at all. I didn't like the idea at all. I thought that was a great conversation. I thought that was something that needed to happen on this on this platform. And just because I don't agree with it doesn't mean that you shouldn't hear it. You know what I mean? And you know, like I follow Joe Rogan's podcast. Some episodes I watch, some episodes I don't. Some episodes I'm cursing at him while I'm listening to it while I'm working out, and some episodes I'm agreeing with him. And like that's why I like that podcast, because it has different trains of thoughts. Like, what'd you think about that app, Eric? Like, what were your thoughts on that?
No, we spoke about it. Absolutely not. I wasn't in favor of it. But I think that even when it comes to opposition, things I don't agree with, I like to have conversations. Because even if we have a conversation with something that I might not agree with it, there may be some components to it that we say, you know what, okay, here's something we could work. Here's something we could work for. Like when Edwin Raymond talks about having a program where people actually document warnings so that cops can actually document all the work that they do. I'm not in favor of that. I said it wasn't, but it's something to think about. Maybe we could tweak it and work with that ideology. So I think that no conversation is wasted, and the only thing that's wasted is not having a conversation, not asking questions. So Patrick Donahue says, if Bakari becomes mayor, can I be part of his security detail? Absolutely, brother. What are you, like 6'5"? Absolutely. You can see everything there. I think you can put John in your pocket. So no, all kidding aside, yeah, definitely. But John, I do agree with some of the friends and listeners here on the podcast. If that's the move you ever decide to go into politics, I support it. I would never try to retract you or take you away from this. But I do believe that we have a larger impact doing the podcast and being an unfiltered voice. I think we have much more footing out there. But again, if that's what you ever decide to do, I support it 1,000%. And I do think that you are the man for the job. There's no doubt about it.
No, I appreciate you guys. Appreciate all you. Yeah, but the app was weird. You know, I had a lot of questions about one. I was like the whole time I was thinking, I was like, this would have been great in 1930 if you could have just reported where the Jews are. You know, Adolf Hitler would have loved that app. You know, the other thing is like you're incentivizing people to report on their neighbors, which is snitching, and we know that traditionally, if you could get 1/3 of a population to snitch on your neighbor, that is a communist tyrannical society, which was Stalin's Russia, Nazi Germany. So I didn't like that. Plus, now you're incentivizing people through money. So you don't need cops. You don't need law enforcement because your neighbors are snitching on you, right? And then, am I snitching on you because you're doing something wrong? Or am I snitching on you because I want to get these credits in this crypto sphere, right? I'm sending all this information. Eric's an illegal. Who's verifying that? Yet I'm getting paid to take pictures to do all this stuff, right? So there's no verification process on that. How about if I just take a picture of Marlon and be like, yeah, he's an illegal. Oh, he looks like one. I'm getting paid for that? It's not accurate. He's here legally. And I'm like, where does all that data go? What are you doing with that data? You know, so I had all these questions, but to like say, oh, it shouldn't have been on the platform. No way. 100% should be on this platform. It was a great conversation, interesting conversation. I liked hearing about it. It's what's being discussed in public safety. The other thing, like we hear about these private police forces, I don't agree with them at all. I want to have some of those people on here to discuss that. And the other thing was Eric Umansky, or Ilmansky, whatever his name is, from ProPublica. Thought it was a great interview, great conversation that Sal had. I thought he was a great guest. Do I agree with Eric on his reporting? No. I mean, on that article specifically, yes, I thought it was a great article. I thought it was a fair article. I've read some stuff from Eric that I wasn't a fan of. With that being said, if I read everything that I wasn't a fan of, I would still think that he should be on it. He's talking about public safety. His opinion he's entitled to. His perspective he's entitled to. Why wouldn't we have those people on? Why wouldn't we?
Well, it goes back to what I say. If you don't have those people on, you're now building walls. You don't want to build walls in life. You should open doors. Having those conversations and finding out what's the root cause of someone's mindset could either change your opinion, or your opinion might stay the same, but have a better understanding of what someone else thinks and why they think that way. You should always want to know what's going on, but ultimately why. The why of everything is really what is the key factor. So I would love to know, why does someone think that way? Just as we had Cop Watch on here a long time ago, who was an adversary for many years, stalled my career, and from what I believe, they had a great hand in what happened with CCRB. But to have that conversation of why they think that way, why is really what perpetuates what they're doing. So I think that's what we should get back to. Jim S. says you should have Jessica Tisch on the podcast. No doubt about it. Again, this is a welcome platform for anyone. I don't think we have said no to anyone coming on this podcast. As long as they keep it respectful and professional, I don't see why we would turn anyone down. Unless they came on this podcast and they were being racist and just demoralizing people. But other than that, this is a welcome platform for a left wing, right wing, someone down the middle, or just any walks of life. That's the bottom line, because we all have an important perspective that's centric around public safety. So that's ultimately what this is about, right? This is not necessarily just a police podcast. It's a public safety podcast. Anything that's centric around public safety, politicians, police officers, fire, police enthusiast, your everyday civilian, everyone cares about public safety. Just as Eric Adams says, thank you, Eric Adams, it's the key to public safety, is the key to prosperity, right? So everyone has a stake in this. Everyone has a say. Everyone has a perspective, and that perspective matters.
100%. Yeah, so Jessica Tisch, she listens to this podcast. Her top officials listen to this podcast daily. Reach out. Come on. There's nothing, you're welcome. You're welcome. We'd love to hear your thought about a lot of different things. And, unfortunately, like the upper echelon of the NYPD claims that they like to have open dialogue, yet they never do. And people in the NYPD are demonized for giving an opinion. So I think that's that. I think we nailed it home. Anything before we get out of here?
Listen, I just want to say, check out the Key. I see they're doing some great stuff on social media. With George Bisford. So check out the Key. Still, he's giving out free stuff if you're taking a promotional exam coming up. And if you're not taking a promotional exam, why not just learn more about your job and be have more knowledge? That's the Key out there. JMS says prayers for Derek. Thank you so much for your support, friends and listeners, the continued support. It means a lot. So. Let's pray together. I appreciate it. God bless everyone. And, John, thank you as always. And if you ever decide to be a politician, man, go with it. I'm sure your family supports you, but I hope you stay here. I think we got more power, more impact, but to each his own. God bless everyone. We're 2 hours and 30 minutes into it. Make sure you stay tuned with us. Wednesday, of course, is coming your executive perspective. Sal Greco will be here for you this week, so stay tuned. We got a lot of show coming up for you. I think the shows are awesome. The network is really building, and a lot of that is because of friends and listeners. We appreciate it. Thank you for so much. The comments are fantastic. Let's keep it rocking. How many people do we have on here today?
Had about 500 on here all day. A little low today, but something's happening with Twitter. We keep getting knocked off and going back on, so whatever. Doesn't matter. Whether there's 4 people, 400, 4,000, or 400,000, we're going to be running our mouths anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Well, John, my last question before we go: do you consider yourself an absolutist or an abolitionist?
Oh, Zelnor, he was pushing the line there, Zelnor.
That's what I think. That's what I think. I think he meant absolutist, but okay.
Yeah, sick, dumb. So yeah, that's it. Who are we voting for Democrat? I say none of them. I say none of them. I mean, the only people that you could possibly have any common sense, Jim Walden, I think, has the best record. But common sense, I mean, it's Jim Walden. I didn't love everything Whitney Tilson said, but he's way more common sense than anyone else in the Democratic Party or Curtis Lewa. It's only those three people, in my opinion.
Well, I think it comes down to at this point. Justice Eric Adams did not sign or veto this ridiculous bill from New York City Council to decriminalize jaywalking. I think the question comes down to is, would Jim Walden or Whitney actually sign or veto that bill? And I think the answer to Jim Walden is yes. I think Jim Walden has enough common sense, especially working for a majority of his lifetime in the Eastern District for the federal court system as a prosecutor. I think that Jim Walden would immediately veto that. And I think that's the answer. Who makes sense?
Yeah, I agree. There was something we missed today, but we'll talk about it another day. Maybe we'll talk about it on Friday. A sergeant in 1PP actually worked in 26 Fed Plaza, was just suspended, being accused of being a Chinese spy. Yeah, we don't really have much details on that, but maybe we'll talk about that on the roundtable on Friday. Just so much stuff, man. There's so much news every day. We'd have to be on here all day, every day to bring it. We are going to bring you some more shows. We're working on that now behind the scenes. We appreciate you guys. And anything you want to close us out?
Yeah, please. If you haven't seen it yet, the link is on the site here. There's a T-shirt out there by Mike Smith. There's also a T-shirt out there also by Jason Palomero, who wrote the book Living Blue. 2 different T-shirts out there to support Derek. And I'd also like to give a real shout out. I mean, it's just been real touching. So Paul Conti, who's the coach for Moore Catholic High School in Staten Island, he has a boys team that plays lacrosse. The connection was made through retired detective Mike Smith. I want to thank him. Paul Conti has sent me videos from every kid on the team, including coaches, motivating speeches to Derek. They actually made stickers for their helmets, DD1, in honor of Derek. They retired the number 1 for Derek. They've been flying flags at their games. I don't even know them, never met them personally. Some of the mothers actually reached out to me. It turns out I grew up with some of the mothers of the sons, and just so much support. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Just there's so many people that have helped, and if I haven't thanked anyone personally, just too many people to thank. But I am so appreciative. God bless everybody. Thank you very much. Let's fight cancer together. Thank you.
Shout out Paul Conti. Shout out Mike Smith. Shout out Moore Catholic, St. Peter's. Appreciate you guys. We're out. Find us Unfiltered. We'll be back at you Wednesday, 8:05. Check out the Sal Greco show tomorrow, 12:05.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community, but who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888-901 Blue. That's 888-901 Blue.